Good morning, everybody, and welcome along to Silverstone Sunday morning. I'm John Hindhaugh, Paul Trustwell and Johnny Palmer will be joining me, as well as Joe Bradley, Bruce Jones, Diana Binks and Nick Damon. Seems an awful lot of people for a short run to the flag, which is now less than 3.5 hours away. An awful lot to catch up on. We'll do that in a few moments' time. We're live on RS1, part of the Radio Show Limited network of channels. It's Silverstone, and it's the last 3.5 hours of the Hankook 24 hours, and it's all live right here. And as you rejoin our live coverage, and as we rejoin you, many of you I know have been following along on timing throughout the night. Those of you who are just coming to the broadcast now at just after 7 o'clock here in the UK, having your Sunday morning breakfast, your timing is impeccable. Our timing is impeccable, unusually, because the cars have just recently rolled back onto the track, and after an overnight pause in proceedings. I'll tell you about that in a moment, but let's go through the major incidents since we were last talking to you just before 11:15 last night. 12 minutes past 11 last night for the pedants out of you. The A3 class leader, the number 131, Hofer Racing, powered by Bonk M235 Cup car, on its outlap with Michael Fisher, went into the gravel at Vale and lost 7 minutes. That allowed the similar car, the 235 BMW, into the lead. That the car from Duo Racing. Local yellows was no requirement for a code 60. 1 o'clock in the morning, the 106, the Accelerate Motor Sport Audi RS3 LMS had a problem with the throttle, and the sensor and actuator were changed. Over an hour lost for them. Then at 1 o'clock in the morning, the overheating problems caused by that faulty hose came back to strike. The 76 Synchro head gasket failure following those cooling issues, and they changed the engine in a remarkable 1 hour 40 minutes. Also at 1 o'clock in the morning, the A3 131 had a second he's on our incident sheet, but this time in a good way, retook the lead as Adam Dawson was struggling in the conditions. It was Fisher behind the wheel of the 131, Michael Fisher, the Austrian, who was revelling in and relishing the conditions at that point. Code 60 at 1:38 in the morning, the 12th of the 24 hours, to recover the 175 NKPP Seat from the gravel at Chapel. And at that stage, the race director decided to go out and have a look at the conditions, and that brought us to a red flag at 4 minutes before 2 this morning for visibility issues. Been a bit of a pea super in this part of Northampton, stretching all the way up to Thrapston as well. Not just the local weather here at Silverstone, which can often be a problem, but spreading a bit further and wider. And the cars rolled out as we were coming in, and we actually had cars back on the track about 6:45. Good morning, Paul. And we went back to green flag racing. Actually, we're not quite back to green flag racing yet. We still have the code 60.
You know, this is where the purists are going to have debates about this in pub quizzes for years to come. After the red flag, we had 2 formation laps.
At 6:45 this morning.
Yes. So sorry, after the red flag, we had 5 hours of sitting doing nothing at all. 5 and 3/4 hours of doing nothing at all. Cars were I think 2 of them were under dampness sheets, but all the rest were out and left to the elements. And we I'll try and sort that one out.
No, that's all right. That's all right. The main screen is fine.
Okay. Try refresh.
I am going to do that, yes.
So we then rolled off behind the course car, and then behind the course car, we're not at code 60. We were travelling at course car pace, largely because Peter Daly, who is the clerk of the course, as opposed to Martin van der Pavert, who's race director, he wanted to drive around fairly quickly in order to see how bad the fog was.
Yes.
He didn't want to be driving around at 60 kilometres an hour because you can't see how bad the fog is if you're only doing 60 kilometres an hour. As if you try and do 100 miles an hour, then suddenly you think, oh, this is a bit thick.
Actually, it's a bit thicker than I thought.
Yes, so he wanted to drive at speed, so he did that and decided then that he would have to call a code 60. So after we had the course car pull in, rather than being greeted by a green flag, they were greeted by the purple flag. So we went immediately to code 60. But as I say, those 2 laps didn't really count because one of them was the startup lap. One of them did count as a racing lap. But as I say, that's the sort of thing that purists will argue about. The good thing is...
did they take the cars off the track?
No.
So they left them on the start-finish line?
On the start-finish line. All night I watched them.
Just keeping an eye on them, did you?
Yeah. Some of them were talking. Yeah. Others were just having a little snooze.
Yeah.
Others were complaining that their tyres hurt.
Yes, but I'm sure they were. Tyres were cold for sure.
Yes. No, so they all behaved themselves, and as I say, we've got the thing underway again. Since then, everybody has come. Yes, I think everyone, nearly everyone at least, has made a pit stop, precautionary pit stop, really. But of course,
what tyres did they come in on at the red flag?
Everybody's on slicks at the moment, so...
and did they come in on slicks at 2 o'clock in the morning?
Yes,
right, okay.
Yes, so the tyres have been maintained for that. But I mean, they did want to bring the cars in for a quick precautionary pit stop. However, the count of pit stops on the official screen has glitched by 1 because of the red flag situation. So the count of pit stops is 1 too high. So if you are counting pit stops, that's why the official screen is wrong, and I think they're going to correct that eventually when the official results are issued. So that's kind of what has happened. So
everybody's got 1 too many?
Yes.
Right.
The
course car is back out at the moment.
Yes, that'll
One
be...
of the McGann RSs that do course car duty here, also part of the Silverstone driving experience, and indeed exactly the sort of vehicle that I did my ARDS test, redid my ARDS test in a few years ago here.
I had a chat with Peter Daly whilst there was nothing else going on, and he described to me his laps in the fog last night when the decision was made to suspend the race. And he said it was very swirling, and we've seen that from a couple of the onboard shots as well. Down Hanger Straight, this is odd. Down Hanger Straight, there is, as you say, a bit of a pea super on, but as you turn into the Vale, it clears up, and by the time you get to the International Pit Straight, going back up the hill, it's actually clear.
Yeah.
You then go into farm and into the village, and as you then turn onto the Wellington Straight, you then go back into the thick fog again. So it's kind of sat in these little areas pretty much all night, and
that very much mirrors what the conditions are like driving down the A43 to come here, and it was in and out of patches of fog depending on the
slight changes in elevation or how much moisture there is around in the...
Looking out of the window of the commentary box here on the start-finish line, right on the start-finish line, you'd be thinking, well, why aren't we racing?
Well, quite. And indeed, you can see the start-finish line from the camera position at Copse. You know, there's no problem at all there. 155, the JM Lippmann car, the Webheads sponsored car, Baz Cooten, coming into the pits, and that
wet tyres.
Reminds me to tell you that car suffered a puncture in the middle of the night as well. I say the middle of the night because we were racing until 2 o'clock this morning, so there was some battling going on, and as you described there was a real humdinger of a battle going on in the A3 class, which I'm not laying the blame at Adam Dawson, but his lap times were just way off what the 131 Bonk car was doing, and that was why the Bonk car was able to retake the lead despite having lost, in fact, 2 laps he lost in the gravel whilst he was being recovered.
Let's go down for our first racing pit stop of Sunday, our live coverage from trackside. Diana Binks is watching the 155. Good morning, Diana.
Because it's going to be dry later, but I think it's virtually impossible to keep the cars on track at the moment. Track temperature and everything's damp. It's certainly not slick weather. It's certainly not slick weather on cold slicks. So yeah, challenging conditions here at Silverstone.
It is, isn't it? Because the cars have been on the grid all night, or certainly for the last 4 hours or so. How do you get an opportunity to check anything? Was it just those installation laps that tell you what you need to know?
Yeah, I think actually it was quite remarkable. The cars have been sat out there in cold, damp, having raced, and actually all started up, which is, I mean, I'm not sure any of my cars might do that at home, but yeah, no, that's it. It was those 2 cycling laps, and I think race control were doing the right thing. They immediately put it under code 60, so we didn't end up with 13 cars off at turn 1 to allow people to come in and change tyres. On the cycling laps, you're not allowed to come in without a 5-lap penalty. So that's why they put the code 60. Course cars just come in, so yeah, maybe we're going to go back to racing, shall we?
Thanks, Jem. I'm sure you got a nice little sleep.
Lovely sleep, actually.
Right, fantastic. Bruce, welcome. Good morning to you, sir. You're up the other end of the pit lane.
All right, I will go up there in a minute. Thanks. Morning, Diana. Yeah, so while the cars are going slowly around the track under code 60 conditions, some of the crews are taking the opportunity not just to put a fresh set of wets on, but in the case of the Hofer Racing BMW, to do a disc and pad change. While stuff is slow on the track, they're going to get this routine work done, but clearly the race stopped overnight. And now getting going, but not quite. It's in under starters' orders in many ways, as they're looking for track condition and, more to the point, John, track visibility. That was the problem last night. Matt Neal, I think, told one of our crew that he couldn't even see the side of the circuit. And it started to come in. He could almost not see the sides of the racing line that was so critical, as the drivers were saying, so greasy if you went off that racing line. And that, I think, is why we had so many cars sliding off the circuit.
And thank you both, Diana and Bruce, down there in the pit lane this Sunday morning with 3 hours and 16 minutes to go. Planned maintenance, all part of endurance racing nowadays as well, Paul, and a number of other cars apart from the Seat we were talking about there that also had brake changes overnight?
Yes. I'm surprised that Bonk Motorsport is choosing to do one, actually, because I thought once we'd gone to the red flag conditions, those who had changed their brakes before that we went to red flag would be kicking themselves. And because having got to this point where there are just over 3 hours remaining, I thought to myself they'll probably make the brakes last. But and this could be critical for Bonk because they are in the middle of a battle for A3. As far as the overall positions are concerned, possibly a crucial difference. We haven't really talked about the race positions since we've come back onto the live broadcast, and that is to say the 303 Red Camels Breukers driven Seat leads the way by 2 laps over the Team Blakemolen number 100 car. It's actually just less than 2 laps now because of the pit stop since the stoppage, but it was 2 laps at the stoppage. That 2-lap margin largely has arisen, partly because of Rick Breuker's pace, but largely by the fact that the Red Camels team got a pad change done under code 60 conditions, whereas the Blakemolen team did a pad change, pad and caliper incidentally, whereas the Red Camel teams just changed the pads, but the Blakemolens changed the pads and the calipers together and under green flag conditions. So that cost them basically those 2 laps. That was how they fell that far back. Let's say the planned maintenance, the changing of the calipers and pads together cost the Blakemolen team, and I decided that was going to be quite difficult for them to get back on terms after that falling back.
In terms of third position, it's the LMS Racing by Baz Counton, who is a little further back down in third position. Antibody driving that car at the moment. Fourth in the TCR category. category, and fourth in the race is the Holmgaard Motorsport car, and that is the 102 machine, and that has got Jens, now is it Jens or Jonas who is driving that? It's driver number 4, so it is Jonas Holmgaard behind the wheel of that. Hofer Racing, powered by Bonk Motorsport, that is leading A3 as we have documented. 5th position for that car, that little BMW M235. So Michael Schrei behind the wheel on its outlap. That's just had some service in the pit lane as well. 6th position, NKPP Racing by Baz Cowton, the 175 Cupra TCR, and it's Harry Hilders behind the wheel of the 175, excuse me, confusing myself this morning on that one. Behind them, Duo Racing are second in A3, having dropped those laps as Paul was reporting there. 7th position in the overall, second in A3. Top 10 finished off by Kawasaki Racing by Baz Cowton, 155 Cupra, JW Bird Motorsport, the car that had so much pace early on with Rory Butcher behind the wheel some 20.5 hours ago. The 221, the Accelerate Motorsport Audi with its issues overnight is down in 10th position. Beyond that, PDM Motorsports BMW Z3 M Coupe still running the 999 car, and now in 11th position. Behind the wheel of that car is Dimitri Kleiskins, who is driving that at the moment. Then it's the Synchro Motorsport, having had that super fast engine change, and Accelerate Motorsports Mini with its problems. It took 4 hours to change an engine on that car. And then the team at Hyundai Denmark and Motorsport Development cars have been retired for some time, as you will see by the lap deficits. Let's nip down to the pit lane while we digest that and have a quick word with Ollie Bryant, who's out of the 235 BMW.
How's it going driving the Duo BMW? You were driving it last night when we actually came off air. You had quite a long stint through the darkest of the dark.
Yeah, it was. It's going well. I mean, unfortunately we've just had to do a wheel bearing, which would have been handy under the code 60, but we'd also done the brakes just before the red flag last night, so a bit of a double whammy there. But yeah, I had a good stint from sort of 10:30 till 12:30. Very, very tricky circuit conditions. The dry-ish line was getting thinner and thinner, and if you put any wheel 6 inches off line, that was it. You had a huge moment. So I ended up ploughing through the mud hole at Maggotts Beckett's, and the car's got traction control in the wet weather, so as I sort of ploughed in, I was downshifting, sort of scrabbling for grip, trying to get through it, and of course the traction's cutting the power, so I just made it out, fortunately, but that only cost me about 10 seconds. And then the 131, the other 235 BMW that we're racing against, and they had to tow him out with a tractor, so the result was we managed to claw it back. It was sort of 3 laps when we got in, and then I think we were down to 20 seconds behind him when I got out. So that went well. And then I got out the car and we put Adam Dawson in, and he was struggling a bit with the conditions because when you go out on the cold tyres, of course you struggle to get any temperature in them. You know, it took me a good 5 or 6 laps to get any pace out of the car. And then I left at that point to go and get a bit of kip, and I've come back now and found out that we did the brakes, and obviously there was a red flag for most of the night. So with only 3 and a bit hours to go, it'll be very difficult for us to catch them. They've just done their brakes under code 60, which of course worked well for them.
Yeah, well, it's the way it rolls. But you got through the Maggotts bomb hole issue. On down the pit lane, Ollie. Catch you later. Thanks very much.
Just persevering there with Bruce with a little bit of a dead spot on the radio. Mike, good morning to Dead Squirrel, who's part of the BRSCC Midland Rescue Unit at Stowe. He's tweeted in at RSL_studio, hashtag this is endurance, if you are getting in touch with us. Let's go back to Diana Binks, who is starting her day off with a couple of interviews. Morning again, Di. Who have you got for us now?
I have Sandy Mitchell with me from Accelerate Motorsport, the 106 Audi. Sandy, it's been obviously an interesting evening. We're all just catching up with what's been going on. But first, before we talk about that, how's the event been going for you so far?
It's been good, yeah, great experience. My first 24-hour race and first time driving the Audi TCR car, so yeah, really enjoying it. And it's been tricky conditions throughout the race with it sort of going wet, dry. And yeah, pretty foggy towards the end of my stint just before we had the break. But yeah, I've just done a short stint there, handed it over to Akil. And so yeah, I'm not sure if I'll be out in the car again, but yeah, I think it's going all right.
I have to tell you, you don't normally get this much sleep.
Yeah, I know, yeah, I was quite lucky. So yeah, I've had a decent sleep now, so yeah, feeling not too bad.
Sorry, I thought you were talking to me. Sandy, you said it's your first experience. What have you learned so far? Because these events are fantastic, but we have had some very challenging situations here with the weather and the new surface here at the track.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the most important thing is to keep it on the track and finish the race, which we've managed to do most of the time. And then, yeah, we've had a couple little issues here and there, but driving in the dark was pretty new to me as well, so it was good to get quite a long stint in the dark. It's about midnight, so yeah, a lot of experience gained.
What were you doing before?
Racing-wise? Well, I've been doing British GT the last couple of years and Formula 4 before that. And I'm doing the Blancpain Endurance Championship this year, so one of the rounds of that Spa 24 hours, so this was one of the reasons to do this, to gain some experience before that, so it's not all new on the big one.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Sandy.
Well, thanks very much.
Thank you, Diana. And still under code 60 at the moment. Delighted to welcome Martin van der Pevert down into the booth with us this morning. Good morning.
Okay, good morning.
A busy night,
even
though there was no racing going on. That doesn't mean that you guys get to go away and have some sleep. We're still at code 60 at the moment. Let's talk about that straight away. Conditions not good enough on various parts of the circuit for visibility reasons.
The problem is the marshal's posts can't see each other.
Yeah.
The drivers can see clearly now, not on all the Meggetts and Baggetts, and at the new pit lane there are some problems with the side, but the main thing is the marshal's posts can't see each other. And that was different from, we did at 5:15, we started in the inspection lab, and then it was very good. But we mentioned that we take the decision at 6:15, so we get out of that time, and then it was also good, not so good as first, but still good. And then we started the race, and then the fog came again.
And explain to people, Martin, why it's important that the marshal posts can see each other and why you can't race when they can't.
Every track in the world is built so every marshal's post can see each other. So if you do yellow, you do green. So you have to see each other.
And in case you lose communications with marshals, they need to be able to see what's going on elsewhere as well.
Yeah, but in the fog, we can also don't see it on the cameras.
Yes.
And that's the second thing. The third thing is we can do it verbally. So you can say I go on green or I go on yellow, but everybody does that. You can't hear an accident anymore.
Yes.
Because everybody is busy on the radio. So you have to be, the communication is the most important thing now.
Yeah.
But the visibility, it's very important.
The issue that we've got is it is so changeable. A moment or two ago, before we started those interviews in the pit lane, I was looking out over the start-finish line here, and it was absolutely clear.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, beyond, now I can still see the other side of the track.
Yeah.
But beyond the grandstands, I can't see anything now where that was clear before. And this is just the fog swirling around, presumably.
Yeah, I heard it happens more, especially in this time. Someone says at 7 o'clock it's over, then the fog is gone because the sun is coming. But that's what you said. 5 minutes ago I was outside and I say it's clear, you can't believe the side is worse. And now it happens here. Yeah.
Martin, while we have you, if I may, I'd like to talk a little bit about Code 60. Not every series uses it. Creventic were an early adopter of Code 60, and you, along with your team, have refined the system. Not every set of track marshals are used to it, but it seems as though the guys here at Silverstone and most of the tracks that we're going to for second or third times now for Creventic, they've got used to it, and as they get used to it, the system works even better.
Yeah. I started with Code 60 about 20 years ago, so I do it a long time. I even use it in motor races, amateur races. It works. When they started with Code 60, it's difficult because the cars have no speed limiter, and they can't see exactly how it works. But in the years they get used to it and they know what the speed is, even if they have no speed speed meter. And if the marshals are used to Code 60, we explain it, we give a lot of lessons. That's why we always do the training in the free practice and in the night practice. Yeah. So everybody is used to it, and if the marshals know how it works and they are confident in their own safety, then it's fine. And the drivers are behaving in a very good way. Yeah.
I've always thought that it's a fantastic system. I work a lot in the States, and when you have multi-class racing, obviously if you put a safety car out, then you've got to do a wave by to try not ruin the battles in the field. Yeah. You've got to do a wave by, reset the field, make sure everybody's in the right order, and it just takes time away from racing. This is a lovely system because without compromising safety, it is really the Creventic mission statement that everybody gets as much track time and as much fun as possible. Now, you as the race director, you want that to happen, but it's got to be done in a safe way.
Yeah. But the Code 60 is safe because you use the flag where it's for, and the yellow flag. If you use a 4 calls yellow, where is the accident if you use all the yellow flags?
Good point.
So. This Code 60, everybody drives slowly and you can still do all the other flags. The oil flag, the one yellow flag, 2 yellow flags, white flag, you can use every flag, except the green, of course.
Finally, for you, Martin, before I let you get back and assess the situation again, we've got a new circuit this year at Navarra.
Yeah.
What sort of preparations do you and the race direction team have to make when you go to a new circuit? Have you already visited, or will you at least visit it before we go and race there?
What I normally do, last year we had an awful lot of new tracks for the Creventic series. What I do, I have a pre-event list. I send it to the clerk of the course and the track there, so they can prepare. I explain a lot of things, how we work, how we want to do it, what we want to have, all those sort of things. So, and then I come mostly 1 or 2 days early and I go over all the procedure. And what we always try to do, the Creventic clerks and the race director, is try to build up one team. So they have the knowledge of the track.
It's their track, that's where they are all the time.
Exactly, and we have the knowledge of the regulations and the cars. So, and we put it and try to put it together and make it one group, and we work together. So it's always fine. It's no jealousy, no bossy things. We just do it in a collegial way.
Yes. Yeah, collegiate way. Yes, absolutely. And also the relationship that you and your team have with the competitors. Most of them come back and do several races. I raced at Kota last year, and I was very impressed with the information coming backwards and forwards and the atmosphere that helps create within the pit lane. I know that's very important to you, isn't it?
I talk an awful lot with the team managers. They can always come upstairs. I explain them everything. What they want to know, they get. And
so you don't want to just be talking to them when you're telling them off for doing something incorrect?
Yeah.
You don't just want to be talking to the team managers when you're telling them off for doing something incorrect. You want to build a proper relationship.
No. Also,
with them.
what was good is sometimes they come for information. Is this allowed? Is this allowed? Because if they ask information, I don't have to give them a penalty if they do it wrong.
Yeah.
So please come before.
A question on that one then, Martin. When the fog started coming down last night, whilst the race was still going on, were you getting messages from drivers, team managers telling you how bad it was? So you knew. The problem is that the fog, even last night, was a bit patchy, wasn't it? And you couldn't necessarily see here.
Then a lot of teams came upstairs and said that it's getting worse, so we can't see everything. So please take a decision. Not stop the race, but please take a decision.
Yeah.
And I think that is very good that we have a contact between the
It
drivers
has to
and the
go
team managers.
both
Yes,
ways,
because I
that's
can't
right.
see anything, and they see it in a different way than I do.
Yeah, yeah. Although, of course, some of the teams see it from their point of view, not from the point of view of their competitors.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
you
yeah.
can't take everything the teams say.
No.
You have to take a
Of course.
consensus.
I know that the teams sometimes try to push me in direction I don't want, but if more than one team is coming,
There wouldn't be racing teams if they weren't trying to push you.
exactly.
Martin, thank you very much indeed.
Okay.
And will you accept our thanks for you and all of your team for the hard work that you do, not just here, but for the whole season. And let's not forget, ladies and gentlemen, who, if you're listening and watching, Martin and his team have to be here for 24 hours as well for the races. So it's an endurance for them as well. Are you looking forward to the season, Martin? We've got another great season coming.
Yeah, of course. They're very nice tracks. Navarra is new, so it's, we have to find out how this works. But we made some huge progress in Kota and Spa, and so they also were a bit afraid of what sort of group is this, and we came there and we found our way. So it's fantastic. So I'm very proud of everything.
Thank you very much, and keep up the good work, you and all your team. Thank you. Martin van der Pervens is our race director, joining us live from trackside this morning. We're still under code 60. Just a note for those of you for whom this is important, team managers as well, who I know will be listening on 16:02 AM this morning. Thanks to Paul Goodall and the team for getting us up on the AM frequency here at Silverstone this weekend. Stint times officially started at 06:45 this morning. So when the red flag was on, that basically took out any that zeroed your counter. You pressed the reset button. So official start for stint times was from 06:45 this morning.
I suspect that there will be. I don't think it's a big issue anyway because of the composition of the teams. But the limitations come on the driving times that pro drivers can do, or even semi-pros can do, and in this category there are very few semi-pros. On the subject of which, though, I should just mention Stuart Hall and call him up before the beak, because Stuart Hall was down to be driving the Accelerate Audi, you'll remember, car number 106.
Yeah, he's very quick at it during night practice in horrible conditions.
Well, absolutely. And I spoke to, who did I speak to? Somebody from the team, I can't remember who it was now. But I said, well, you know, what's Stuart going to do? And apparently he was very tired, bless him, after his GT race, and they weren't quite sure whether he was going to be coming back to do any of the driving in the A3 the A3 RS3 this morning. And we heard from Sandy Mitchell that it was going to be Akil getting into the car next, and Akil is in the car now. But I don't think Stuart's going to get to drive that car this morning, from what I gather. He was a bit too excited, as I say, after the terrific win in the GT race, although...
do you think he was as tired as a newt then? Do you
that's
think that
kind
might
of
have
what
been?
I was trying to get at very gently.
Yes.
But you've put it a little less gently. As ever.
Listen, you can't begrudge the guys from Rofco that, can you, after all of their hard work?
However, one thing we were suggesting was that they were going to win the race overall, and he hasn't won the race overall because it was the Simpson Motorsport Ginetta that won the race overall on the road, and I was suggesting that they might be getting a penalty for going too far with Michael Simpson. And
the pro driver there.
Well, he was in the list, the Creventic list, as a pro driver. But he went up and he said, "I'm not a pro, I'm a semi-pro." And the Creventic people have taken that.
He was downgraded to silver.
He was actually upgraded. He was downgraded to silver, and Creventic said, "Even though you're a silver, you're a pro."
Right. Okay.
And then I think probably afterwards, when they realised how much driving they did, and they then had to go back to Creventic and say, I know we said he's a pro, but actually can he be a semi-pro because he's a silver? So because he was a semi-pro, he's then not constrained by the driving time limitation. So that one has been allowed to stand. So the prototype has won the 12 hours overall, and I think that's an important statement to make.
And I don't think that's bad officiating at all. I think that's, you know, fairly pragmatic, and we would have expected the prototype to win. It had the pace. Martin van der Pervet, who's just left us, is now out on the circuit, collecting a few cones and replacing them on the track in the Megane RS. Oh, that's a dead cone. It has lost its base that he's picking up there. A couple of questions coming in on Twitter at RSL_studio. Hashtag this is endurance. And
yes, Stuart Hall isn't allowed to use that hashtag.
Yeah, no, indeed not. What happened to the i30N? Seemed to be going okay, or at least going when I fell asleep last night, says James Brown.
You must have fallen asleep early.
They ran out of suspension parts, didn't they, for that car? Brand new car. And they were still sort of breaking it in, literally and metaphorically, and eventually had to retire the car.
So they did, but
7.5 hours in from memory.
Yeah, 7 hours 20 minutes, very good. And with a 10:30 start, that means that you must have gone to bed about 6 o'clock.
But you don't know what time zone he's on.
No, indeed, no.
He may be somewhere else around the other side of the world where it's already 2 days after yesterday. Trevor Williams said, interesting listening to our full course yellow and Code 60 talk, says under full course yellows the incident is where the double wave yellow. So Code 60 is a gimmick that only works from Creventic. Trevor, I disagree. First of all, I don't think it's a gimmick. Creventic are the people who make it work best. I think other people have closed their minds to it, and having watched as much American multi-class racing as I do, I'm pretty bored now of losing 25 minutes of a 2 hours and 40-minute race because of a very short full course yellow, because the field has to be reset. The problem with yellow flags and safety cars in multi-class racing is that it quite often you have to accept that you're going to lose 20 minutes or half an hour of racing every time you throw a yellow flag to go through the whole procedure, closing the pits, catching the leader up, waving people by who aren't, then resetting the field after the pit stops, getting the wave by of people who are between the leader and their class leader, etc, etc, etc. Or you have to accept that sometimes when you bring out a safety car, it's going to completely nose up one of the classes because of where the leader was at the time, if they pick up the leader. If you try to mitigate that effect, which is why safety car periods last so long in other forms of racing, then that's what happens. If you don't, you run the risk, and we've seen this many times, and seen a fabulous battle in even Le Mans and FIA WEC level races where the GTE battle is 2 or 3 cars having a great scrap. The leader passes all bar one of them, and a yellow flag comes out, and therefore 2 cars lose a lap on their class leader immediately. So you've got to balance it, and that doesn't happen under Code 60, and I understand what you're saying about it only seems to work for Creventic. I think that's because they make sure it works, and Martin van der Pervet telling us there just exactly how they help the different circuits and the different marshal teams make it work.
Yeah, the risk of putting the soapbox even further underneath you, I think all of it depends on the driver behaviour and the driver response. If the driver responds to a Code 60, or if a driver responds to a neutralisation is how can we steal an advantage out of this, then people are going to start pushing it, and you're going to get accidents coming on. If drivers respond to a Code 60 or a neutralisation by saying, we need to just pause here, take the racing hat off, we've got something happening that's dangerous, and just relax. And the problem is that switch in the driver's head doesn't exist, and you can't turn the racing driver mentality, I'm going to get an advantage out of this.
A very senior driver who also acts as an FIA driving standard steward, and I had a very short but very animated conversation about this at Spa Classic last year, and he was asking me about Code 60 and whether I thought it was something worth looking into for other forms of the sport. And I said, absolutely. And he said to me, but of course we wouldn't have to worry about any of this if drivers would just respectable wave yellows. And I looked at him and went, of all the people who I thought might say that, I wasn't sure you would have said it. I said, but you would have tried to get an advantage when you were driving. He said, I know, but it's wrong. And I realised that. And it is wrong. And we've got to educate drivers. And we had Daphne Edwards in here yesterday talking about the Sean Edwards Foundation, Sean's mum, talking about educating drivers to be more respectful. And it's got to happen. It's simply got to happen.
1 minute to the end of the Code 60 procedure.
Which gives me a chance to go down to Diana Binks in the pit lane. I am pushing the soapbox back towards Paul at the moment and saying to Diana, where are you and who are you with?
I'm with Max Bladen from the Accelerate Motorsport 134 Mini, but the 106 has just pitted and gone back out. Obviously, Akil has stayed in the car. They just made some changes and he's just going to refuel now. I can see him. But Max, let's chat to you about the Mini and the whole experience so far. We know there's been a number of challenges, but your Mini has certainly been in this garage quite a lot.
Yeah, it's quite fitting as it originates from the Mini challenge. So, it's been definitely a difficult one. Went back out last night and, yeah.
In fact, the Mini's just on its way in. I can see it now.
Yeah, all it's doing is some standard pad changes just to make sure while we're on the Code 60. No, but yeah, it's been good. It's a bit unfortunate about the engine yesterday, but seems to be running well. Again, I think last night me and Rob went back out and we were quickest in class. So yeah, it's a good car. It's got its little issues right now, but I think we're getting through it. We realised the issue was the pit limiter. That's what caused the engine issue. So since then, we've not even bothered using it because we think it was just too aggressive on the engine.
Oh, that's interesting. Obviously, it's a shame you didn't get that conclusion before, but I've got to say, we've all been saying how impressed we were with the team and changing that engine so quickly.
Yeah, no, definitely, they're hard-working boys. I think you heard it all on your commentary as well. They've been working hard. I suppose it's got to be done, though, hasn't it? It's not just about the team; it's about a brand as well. Because they're Mini on the grid, so you have to do your bit, really. But no, the boys have been working hard, and they definitely deserve a medal after all of them.
Will you be getting back in the car?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think hopefully finish the race or close to. Yeah, it'll be good to this year.
Thanks, Max.
No, thank you very much. Cheers. Bye.
Live from trackside on RS1, part of the Radio Show Limited network of programmes, of channels, excuse me. We are back to green flag racing with 2 hours and 47 minutes to run. Ivo Breukers behind the wheel of the Red Camel Jordan.NL Seat Leon LCR TCR V3 DSG to give it its full title. And if you want to get in touch with us at RSL_studio, hashtag this is endurance. I think the Mini team will have that tattooed on their foreheads by the end of this. This is endurance. They've lived that one, haven't they? Good morning to Johnny Palmer, who is filling the middle seat in this stint.
Good morning, everybody.
Are you up to speed now? The purple flags have been withdrawn.
They have.
Back on it straight away, are you?
Yeah, I reckon so. I mean, there was a little bit of a false dawn, if you like, just after just before we arrived with a 6:45 restart, and I think we had maybe one green flag lap, or maybe we never left the Code 60, I'm not sure, but...
Paul explained that it was a requirement to get the timing screens reset, but effectively
right.
we sat at under yellow flag conditions, yeah.
I had a quick chat with Paul Parkin, who's been on the start line for much of this weekend doing some flagging, and they say they do try and avoid 2 stoppages of a race. One is okay overnight, but then once you've restarted the race and you're under Code 60, it's best to keep the cars moving, and that means you can restart with very short notice, as we've just had now, 1 minute, and we're back to racing again.
Mini is getting a little bit of remedial work on the front end. Tie wrap's been applied to the front valance and splitter, and now the Mini not looking quite as pristine as it did earlier in the event. The left-hand headlamp bezel has gone missing at some stage, and there's 1 or 2 cracks in the bodywork. A very distinctively red, white and blue BizKart sponsored machine. is down and away, and the BMW Mini will rejoin. It's heading towards the fuel station, going in through Garage 12. So let's just remind ourselves of what has become a two-part race, not designed as such. Started yesterday at 10:30 in the morning when the weather was overcast, but the track drying, very greasy indeed. And Synchro 76 car finding one of many that found the slippery spots on the circuit. The Maggots and Beckett's area was certainly one place that was causing problems, and at Stowe as well it was very slippery indeed. And then the start of Evo's dip, Evo's stick, if you will. The little bit of grass in the Beckett's S's that Evo explored. Eventually he did get stuck in it. Remember, for the first 7 hours of the race we had the GT3 cars and the prototypes out there finishing off the Hankook 12 hours that they'd started on Friday night. Once those cars were withdrawn in the early evening, it gave the touring car, 24H touring car endurance series by Hankook the chance to shine. The two BMWs have bossed the A3 class, but not been a clean run for any of them. And the Seats and the Golfs in TCE class, TCR class rather, struggling to get temperatures into the back tyres, which caused a few spins. So we are back to green flag racing after a red flag, Paul. So the official timing on the red flag was from 1:56 in the morning to 06:45. Is that how it's going to work?
Let me turn my microphone on before I start talking. Yes, it is, and that equates to. Let me just. Actually, that's not something that gets. Yes, it is 4 hours and 48 minutes and 40 seconds of.
And
red.
40 seconds.
That's important.
Yeah.
Actually, it's very difficult. There was some discussion overnight between anorak wearers like myself as to actually when the red flag was shown, because there was a decision made and a button pressed in race control, which was red flag, and that to me is when the red flag was shown.
Yeah.
And that happened at 1:50, whatever I wrote on that, 1:56. There was then, when the red flag was shown at the start-finish line, which was 2:15, but the intervening 19 minutes was consisting of them bringing the cars round, stopping them on the start-finish straight, getting the drivers out of the car, and then saying, "Oh, I suppose we ought to show the red flag," and then that was when the red flag was waved.
So red flag wasn't waved when red flag was called, and the teams answered the call to the red flag.
Exactly. At the time, what happened was. Peter Daly was out in the course car inspecting the conditions, and what he did was turn the yellow revolving lights on that car, which prevents anybody from overtaking it. They lined up Rick Broikers, because Rick was in the 303 car at the time.
So more like a standard safety car.
Yeah, they lined up Rick behind him, and then they brought the cars onto the grid, but just like they do when you do kart racing, rather than just lining up nose to tail on the grid, they lined you up side by side, 2 by 2, right, so that the next people can get into the karts for the next race, if you've ever done that.
Yes, I know exactly what you mean, yes. Arrive and drive stuff, yes.
Yes, so they lined them up 2 by 2 on the grid, got all the drivers out of the cars, then put all the drivers back in the cars again because they'd all forgotten to turn the lights out. They all got back in the cars again to turn the lights out.
They haven't got little buzzers on all these cars when you open the door?
So there was a little bit of toing and froing, and of course, because it was part fairmade conditions, all the race engineers were being kept behind the wall, and the drivers didn't know what to do. But
being drivers,
they sorted themselves out, and then, as I say, initially we had a 1 hour delay, but to be fair, after being told, they stood the marshals down for 1 hour, and then after about half an hour they said, you know what, this is going to take longer than that, so they immediately said, we're going to close everything down effectively consistently for 3.5 hours, which would mean that the decision was taken at basically 5:45 what to do.
Yeah.
And then they said, okay.
So pitch inspection, umpires coming back out at 5:45.
That's right.
See what you mean? Yeah.
And at 6:15, the decision was made to restart the race at 6:45, which meant that the engines could be switched on at 6:30. So it was all kind of carefully scheduled.
5:45, just as I was doing the bacon butties for the boys then, was the pitch inspection, and we were leaving pretty much as they were deciding what to do. Arrived just as the cars were on those 2 formation laps. And I'll tell you how I knew the cars were running, actually, is I tuned in to 16:02 AM, and the TV mics have been feeding that all night, and I could hear the cars going round, so I said to the guys, they're moving, but not very quickly. So I think it must be code 60.
Yeah, so...
And then Johnny got his phone working after he'd woken up.
No, I was snoozing all the way in the car. That's valuable time to get more kip in. But I knew it was 6:15 initially, then 6:45, and obviously then we had a slightly extended code 60 before we got back to green flag running.
We ran through when we fairly early on when we came on the air just how things are at the field. It is still the 303 that's leading, but none of the gaps at the sharp end of the field. I mean, the gap between first and fourth, the Home Guard Motorsport, is 15 laps, which is
half an hour.
A bit over half an hour, isn't it? 40 minutes, you know.
It's very, nearly over 3/4 of an hour.
Right, okay.
Because the lap time's 2 minutes 20, true. So it's getting on. But the gap first, second to third is reasonably close.
Yeah.
But...
It's a problem.
Yes, I did mention earlier on, the Red Camel kind of car took the advantage by being clever with their pad change.
Yeah.
I can only assume that Blake Molan's hand was forced because they were at the stage where they were checking pad wear at every tyre change. And Blake Molan then had to make the call, but they had a quicker stop to change the pads because they changed the calipers at the same time, so the calipers and the pads got changed at the same time. But they had to do it under green flag conditions, whereas we had a code 60 a few minutes later, and that enabled the Red Camel car to come in, and they did their pad change under code 60 conditions, and that was where they got themselves ahead, because up until that point the Blake Molan team, I thought, had the advantage. However, we've still got 2.5 hours here, and it's only takes something like a spin into the gravel from Ivo, but not that Ivo Breukers would ever spin into the gravel, but...
I can't believe you've said that.
No, but, well, Ivo's already done it, so...
he's got his quarter done.
I can't jinx him, because he's already been through the gravel.
Through the Evo stick.
Yes, quite. But it is Ivo in the car at the moment.
And he's been caught, I reckon, by that 4th place car. The Home Guard Motorsport Golf might be getting close to taking one of those laps back.
And indeed, and Anti-Bury in the 129 is going even faster. Anti-Bury, who's only 1 lap behind Robert Smith in the Blake Molan Seat. I did this to myself last night after you'd gone. I was getting a bit worried about the Blake Molan times again, but I think they're probably all right. But at the moment, Robert Smith's times are 4 seconds slower than Ivo Breukers, and
Anti-Bury is
10 seconds. Yeah, 10 seconds.
Absolutely
slower.
tearing it up.
So there's a couple. Let me phrase this as a sentence instead of an incoherent thought. There are occasions when the Blake Molan car worries me because it suddenly drops its pace. Now that may just be because they're being cautious in these conditions, or they may have some kind of intermittent problem. I don't know, but just occasionally there are a couple of laps when they slow, and it's not clear why. But I'll leave that thought and move on.
Bruce is asking, and I think you heard that, Paul, on the talkback, is that only at the start of the stint, or is it in the middle, or is it all the way through?
It's a very good point. It tends to be at the beginning of the stint when they're trying to get the heat into the tyres.
Bruce, having heard that, can now add this.
Yeah, well, basically, I spoke to Sebastian last night, and he said, above all, the conditions are so tricky, the drivers are under strict instructions to build up to speed, not to throw it off in the first few laps. And of course, we all know that can work 2 ways. You can sometimes you're better being fully on it, but...
Yeah, agreed, Bruce. Very, very good point there. And I've said before a number of times, these Hankooks, even in these marginal conditions, and remember, everybody is on the same Hankook dry weather tyre or the same wet weather tyre. Not that there's only 4 for everybody, obviously that would be ridiculous, but they're on the same compound and construction. Different sizes of tyres for cars that require different sizes, but generally speaking, everybody here is TCR or the A3 cars are on exactly the same, the exact same tyre. Come back to that in a moment as Di updates us from the pit lane. Is that the 106 car that you're with, Di?
Yes, it was. It seemed it was a bit slow on the previous lap, so they brought the car into the garage, just reversed it in. The crew, as you can see, are having a look at it now. They said it's an electrical glitch. They're just trying to work it out. So at the moment, they're not too sure, but they're being cautious.
That's the Audi, the only Audi in the race.
That's a continuation of problems that car has had already of an electrical nature. The car was switching itself into limp mode before we had the red flag.
Right.
Originally they thought it was a throttle sensor, so they changed that and managed to get it going. And then it went into limp mode again. So they thought, well, what did the throttle sensor make a difference? There's an actuator underneath, right at the bottom of the crankcase, which they then changed again to do with the way the throttle worked. And for a long time that actually worked, and we had the fascinating situation during the night where we had the onboard shots. We had the onboard shot of Rick Broikers, and he was actually overtaken by that A3.
Oh, right.
But it was a bit like, you know, when you're following somebody in the fog, you think, oh, he's going a bit slow, I'm going to go past him. So you go past the car that's going slowly in the fog, and then suddenly you're the first car in the fog, and so you start going slowly. And that was exactly what happened there.
But did that throttle problem happen after any long period of slow running by any chance?
There's been a lot of slow running because of code 60s, but they haven't been long code 60s. Only short code 60s.
Then I'll keep my counsel about what I was going to say there. Bruce Jones is with Synchro Motorsport. They've had a busy
engine change.
Yeah, they've had a busy time as well with a super quick engine change. Is the car back in?
Oh, the car's back in. Alan James just telling me it was an hour and a half for that engine change.
It was.
They
hour and
deserve
40
a
minutes.
massive
Brilliant.
pat on the back. So what's happening now? Lots of steam from under the bonnet.
Yeah, no, like I just said, the engine change, pads, gearbox, radiator, alignment, and 50-litre fuel in an hour and a half. So, yeah, the guy did a pretty good job on that. They did an hour and 45 before, so we had a target of an hour and 30, and I think the actual time was hour 35. So where they change it is just, I think there's an airlock in the system now. We finally got up to race pace now after the stop. So now it's just bleeding it. And fingers crossed, Dan will be back out and back on the pace.
Excellent, thanks a lot. But yeah, but there's no panic. That's the good thing here. No more engine changes though. Hour 15, good target, but let's not go for that.
Yeah, good stuff. And the coolant going in. Dan Wheeler, or Daniel Wheeler, as he's entered, is sitting patiently, waiting to be told to fire the twin-cam Honda motor back up again. Paul, I've been alerted by Right Turn Lover to the number 131 times going out a little bit with Martin Kroll, isn't it, behind the wheel of that car on the 131. He's the leader in A3. Duo Racing, some laps behind, 4 laps behind, but a 2:53 last time around for that Hoffa Racing powered by Bonk Motorsport car. So keep an eye on that for me. 2:37 for the 235 BMW 235, which has got William Plant in behind the wheel at the moment. Now again, 4 laps with 2 hours and 30 minutes exactly to go. You'd think, yeah, he's not going to make that back up, but any little stutter or problem and those laps are going to evaporate rather quickly. By the way, the fog's cleared again on the front straight and I can actually see the sky. I can see what I need to see, the trees behind the Silverstone UTC, all looking lovely again here.
Yes, it's been 2 or 3 slow laps from Martin Kroll, actually. And again, you wonder whether that's tyres not quite getting up to speed. He's only just into the car. Michael Schrei drove the car when it went back to green again, but then got out halfway through the Code 60, or towards the end of the Code 60, and let Martin Kroll into the car. So probably very little in the way of heat in the tyres on that car.
You know, when I said I could see much better here, the hanger straight at the moment looks like a picture of a white room with a polar bear eating glacier mint. That's all you can see at the moment. It's a complete whiteout looking back down the hanger straight from Stowe. I could just about make out what I think is the right-hand side white line, but that's it. Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. So let's take the opportunity to get down to the pit lane and into the pit, the 221 Volkswagen Golf from JW Bird Motorsport, and Rory Butcher is going to tell Diana Binks what's going on down there.
Rory, you've just jumped out of the car. I noticed the guys are just taking the slicks off and putting the wets on. The weekend started off well, didn't you? You were doing some impressive times in that car. Obviously, we've had a lot's gone on in between, but how was that first restart?
Yeah, it was actually a lot of fun. Maybe it's just a little bit too damp at the moment for the wets. It's kind of in that crossover period, but I think just with Kieran not have driven the car in these conditions, we're going to stick the wets on. But yeah, I was slipping and sliding around, and I was starting to get a bit of temperature in, and I think just looking at the lap times, there's that crossover point where I was probably going to start being quicker than the guys on the wets. But yeah, we're now kind of almost near the end of the race, and it didn't go our way, but now the guys have all done a great job, and everyone put in 100% effort. So maybe next year.
Well, we've still got a bit of time to go yet, haven't we? So you never know. But the conditions when you got in the car at that restart, they changed. It became quite foggy again. How did that change everything out at the back of the circuit?
Well, to be honest, my last stint in the middle of the night was foggy and dark, so that was much better. Literally last night, I was kind of just using references at the side of the track, but I couldn't actually see really what was in front of me. And it was scary at times, but I think they made the right decision to kind of delay the race, and but now it's much better, and now we've got the right tyres on. The guys will finish the race for us. So,
Rory, thanks very much and well done.
Thank you. Cheers.
Diana Binks down in the pit lane, working hard with Bruce Jones. Nick Damon's finally deigned to come in this morning. Gave himself. I made the mistake again. I should have learned this many years ago of letting Nick do the pit rotor. So he was first one off last night, and he's the last one in this morning. Yeah.
It's like the milk monitor at school, isn't it? Do you remember the milk monitor? Always got the extra little bottle of milk. And yeah. It's just because he's the guy who became the milk monitor.
And he's only come back now because it takes them this long to get ready for his close-ups on the podium, and I think we'll take him off the podium duty, and oh no, that'll let him go early. No, let's put him back on. Let's put him back on, and then we can all go and just leave him here. That's a much better idea. Kawasaki Racing by Baz Cowton sitting in 6th position, heading onto the Wellington Straight, that must be, because I can see the end of it.
That's the giveaway.
And the fact that it goes left at the end rather than right.
Yes.
That's also the big clue, I always find.
Yeah, but you only know that when you arrive at the corner, don't you? And as long as you've been paying attention around the rest of the lap, you've remembered where you are in the fog. Oh, yeah, this is Brooklands, I think.
Where am I again?
Well, they'll be thinking that as they come out of Chapel, because there is no way of seeing Stowe at the start of the Hanger Straight at the moment. So still a light breeze here at Silverstone, which is bringing patchy fog potentially from over in the distance. Because you're right, immediately in front of us it's clear, but beyond that line of trees you can't see anything.
Yeah, but 10 minutes ago, Johnny, I couldn't see those trees.
I know.
Just behind the grandstands opposite us here, which are a couple of 100 metres away.
But is that next bank of fog that I can see heading our way? I'm not sure.
Very clear sky last night, and that's, I mean, one of the reasons for the fog is the temperature inversion, obviously, as everybody who studies these kind of things will tell you. But the sky is still relatively clear, bit of cirrus that's about all in terms of the cloud cover. And forecast is for a bit of sunshine today. Temperatures rising. Got down to, and Paul will have known this if he was wandering around last night, but it did get down to pretty close to, if not below freezing. There wasn't a frost on the Alfa Romeo Stelvio Milano edition as we came out this morning, and that was showing, depending on how much fog there was around and where we were on the journey, between 4 and 6 degrees Celsius. But it was chilly last night.
It was chilly, but it wasn't freezing, and there wasn't much wind. And part of that was, of course, is why we ended up with the fog, because wind as well tends to help blow fog away.
Yeah.
Although if it forms, it then starts to swirl it around. But there wasn't much wind. And when I did go down to the pit lane, checking out on what was going on, it wasn't wrap up quite as warm and put a hat on and gloves and all that kind of thing. Although I was only down there for a few minutes at each occasion, so you didn't kind of lose your core temperature. So it wasn't as cold as it could have been. And of course, with stopping the race just before 2 o'clock, the main issue was, as we just heard from Rory Butcher there, was visibility as we went from 11 o'clock when the TV pictures shut down through to 2 o'clock. And really, I mean, potentially that was a good bit of racing, because there was only the one Code 60 to recover the 175 BMW from the gravel, and there was a lot of solid racing, and it was hard to see, as Rory said, but it really did sort the men from the boys. And as far as that A3 battle was concerned, it pretty much clarified it, because it enabled the 131 car to, the 131 BMW in A3 to re-establish its 2-lap lead, because until that point they'd both been on the same lap.
Yeah, that one Code 60 came at 1:38 in the morning as well. The 131 had gone into the gravel at 23:12, 12 minutes past 11 p.m. But that was dealt with under local yellows.
Yes, absolutely.
So that was a good long stretch of green flag racing.
Yeah. I mean, from when was it? It was about 10:30 at night when we had the previous Code 60, and then, as I say, ran through till 1:30 in the morning. So it was about 3 hours of green running in fog as well. So very impressive driving from everybody concerned.
Darkness. One thing, but and obviously you can't see as much in the dark as you can in the light, but you have lights. And when we talk about visibility issues, what we're talking about is barely being able to see a hand in front of your face, and not seeing the side of the track, and not being able to pick up your visual markers for where you are on the circuit.
It was exacerbated as well, and particularly Synchro Motorsport and Rick Broikers with the Red Campbell's car, their lights weren't terribly well adjusted. And
Didn't we see that yesterday?
We did mention that the
left
lights
bank of LEDs was a bit
kind
high.
of pointing into the top of the grandstands. But of course, when it became foggy,
flare back from
all you got was the reflection of the fog coming back at you. Now, when you're driving in fog on the road car, the last thing you do is put your lights on full beam, isn't it? So, he needed lights that were low down, and even possibly that he could dim a little bit, but they don't have that function on the racing car, do they? Because you never want to turn them dim or turn them low down.
No, you want them flat out.
So
there is, I mean, that's interesting you should mention that, Paul, because the LED technology that you have now, which you'd never have been able to do with gas discharge lights or even halogen lights, they didn't like being dimmed, but with the LEDs you can actually turn them down. I've got a set of Clearwater lights on the BMW on the bike, and the BMW bike's being very clever. There's a different setting on the CAN bus system, so that they are very bright in the daytime when I want people to see me, and as it gets darker they dim down so they're not blinding, but they're still on until I put my full beam on. But I can actually, there is a setting where BMWs have this thumb wheel, motorcycles have thumb wheel, they call it the wonder wheel because you can do pretty much everything for it, and I can click into a setting there and dim down the lights, because the LEDs don't get affected as much as a normal filament bulb or a gas discharge bulb would have. Talking about lights, by the way, and problems with lights, Rick Broiker's lights just went off there, and he's now just on his day notice lights. Now have they come back on again?
That's full headlights, I think, now.
Yeah. All right, but I thought they'd gone off there for a moment or two. I was pretty certain they had. 303 still leading, by the way.
Yeah, you can tell that by the number 1 on the side of the car, the illuminated SPA A05 team that put those signs on the side of the cars. And talking of a variable adjustment of brightness, those have a variable adjustment of brightness as well, because
cool.
and that's controlled not by the driver with a thumb wheel or anything clever, but by somebody up in race control who
does them all in one go.
Does them all in one go and can turn them to, I think he's got 10 settings of brightness that he can set them to. And of course, the darker it gets, the dimmer he makes them, because otherwise...
And he can do different colours with them. And in fact, at one stage during the Dubai race, not just gone, but the one before, as we're getting at the end of the race, Johnny cued them to change from overall positions to class positions for us,
yes,
didn't
it
he?
is.
Do you remember
yes,
that?
I do.
And you
Absolutely.
did that, and it happened magically.
Incredible. They must...
Just by the power of thought, Johnny.
Yeah, they weren't listening to us. Absolutely not. And it wasn't prearranged. That's what I keep telling myself anyway. It was kind of like the coincidence we had last night when Rick Breukers just started fiddling with the tractive system in the cockpit, just at the point where John and I were talking at length about it. It's the power of radio.
What position has been lost by Martin Kroll? Right Turn Lover was on the money with that one, because he's lost a position overall, 5th place overall. He's now down to 6th place to the NKPP entered Cupra, car number 175, which Ronnie Yost is driving. By rights, he should have been able to do that, because it's a TCR car, of course, taking back a place from the A3 class car. But still the pace of Martin Kroll is significantly slower than his teammates were in, or certainly Michael Schrei or Michael Fisher were when they were in the car.
And Ollie Bryant has pulled that gap down to, it's I think now under 4 laps. I think it's only 3 laps now. 10 minutes and 52 seconds is what it says on the screen between Kroll and Ollie Bryant. Ollie is a very quick driver. Now has he just restored?
Yeah, it's still
the
4 laps. Yes, it's still
10 minutes 52 seconds. I'll keep an eye on that. 2:52 last time around from Kroll, 2:38 from Ollie Bryant. I've raced against Ollie Bryant a couple of times actually. Notably, many years ago when he and his dad used to have very, very rapid Morgans that they ran in the historic sports and touring cars when I was racing the RS31 Capri.
I seem to remember in the dim and distant past having watched Ollie getting into his first races in the Morgan. I'm pretty sure when Graham Bryant was the name that was associated with it, and a bit like Evo and Rick Breukers, suddenly the young man arrives on the scene. But great that they both are driving together this weekend. Bryant family outing in the 235 BMW, the Duo 8 Duo Racing entered car.
Bruce in my ear there, just reminding me about Ollie's exploits in AC Cobra. He doesn't mind cars moving around.
In recent years, yes.
Doesn't mind a car moving around. I've always said that anybody who can drive a historic or post-historic car and deal with that will have few issues with a more contemporary piece of machine. The Accelerate Audi still being worked on for this rather annoying electrical problem that caused the throttle sensor and actuator to be changed last night at 1 o'clock in the morning. They lost over an hour then, but this car still wanting to go into protect mode and limp back to the pits. And there'll be, I think electrical issues are a pain.
The very phrase that came up when I went down there, because there weren't that many cars to talk to, teams to talk to in the pit garages overnight, but I do like to take the opportunity, and yeah, it's exactly that, and particularly when there's water around, because you're thinking, has the water affected things? Is there a short somewhere? What else could it be? And you know, and it's like a lot of these things, you end up making a change and it seems better, but then it comes back again. So yeah, very difficult indeed. And I mean, the Accelerate team, I mean, they're just making themselves shoe-ins for Spirit of the Race award, because having changed the engine on the Mini, they've been plugging away in more ways than one at the Audi as well, and they lost Stuart Hall from the driving lineup. Unless Stuart, I mean, I'm not saying that he won't drive, but I think if he was going to, then he would have done by now. 2.25 hours just under remain of the race.
If only he'd said that he was going to do that, I could have brought my hands device and my helmet, and you know.
Well, they've got 4 drivers anyway, John. That car, so it would have been a 5-driver lineup otherwise.
And it is Mothering Sunday here in the UK. Just reminding everybody, if you haven't got the cards and flowers, Mum shouldn't be up yet. You should be treating her to breakfast in bed. So just quickly nip out down to the 24-hour garage and see what they've got left.
I'm just thinking about what chaos there might be at home, because son is supposed to be doing something for wife, and I just wondering what state the toaster is going to be in when I get home.
Haven't had the call to say that the fire brigade have been in attendance yet, though, have you? Hello, Mr. Trustwell. Yes, this is the fire brigade. Would you like to come back to the remains of your house now? Actually, I say
I have absolute faith in Robin. He will do a great job.
He'll be fine. I once heard at a race circuit, not this one actually, over the public address system, the usual, would the driver of car ABC 1234 please go back to please go back to his car and meet the fire brigades who are attending. It's like, what? I hear from the pit lane the sound of a Volkswagen AG engine unit under some stress. It's been fired up again. Is that the Accelerate Audi?
It certainly is. They're very, very quietly running at the moment because they've been scratching their heads down at Synchro Motorsport. I mean, not just because they're completely knackered after engine change on the Mini, etc., but they can't work out what this electrical gremlin is. It was a slow lap for Akil Rabindra, then he came in. He's still sitting on board, but they literally fired the engine up about 30 seconds ago, but it's just on tick over at the moment, so I'm not sure he'll be going out anytime soon, but they're just working through a long list, and when you don't know where to start, and don't forget, did you remember when Diana was speaking to Max Bladen in the sister car, the Mini, he was talking of how the pit limiter was doing something that led to the, well, it seems quite a long route to engine failure, but maybe, well, we can't presume it's anything similar, but the front wheels are turning, so something is working at least on the Audi, but Akil Rabindra will be back out as soon as he possibly can, and much like his teammate Sandy Mitchell, both racing, of course, together last year in McLaren's in GT racing, British GT. It's something new for them to try, and a lot of these drivers, don't forget, are trying to gear up to do other 24-hour races, and this is something you don't always think about when you have an event at the start of the season, but they've all got an eye on a career as well as having fun, of course, John.
Yeah, exactly, and you know, there's nothing better. I've said this before and people have heard me say this before, but it bears repeating. The only way that you can practice for multi-class racing is to go multi-class racing, and if you learn the skills in a nice environment, respectful environment, as Creventic tends to be. You know, I've been very lucky. Pretty much the majority of my racing has been endurance racing in mixed class fields, and whether the fast cars are Caterham 7s and Lotus 270Rs that are going past you like the clappers, or you're driving a GT4 car and it's a GT3, or you're in a GTE car and it's in a Le Mans prototype, the skills that you learn in multi-class racing are transferable, and once you've got the pace of your car sorted, then having cars going faster and slower is something that you just accept as part of the norm at that point. I think it's a very sensible thing. The only thing I would say, as Bruce has just told me that the Audi is leaving the pit lane, we've had far greater efforts stymied by limiters in the past, although not necessarily engines. I mean, it depends how you're keeping the car at the pit lane speed limit, which is 40 kilometres an hour here. A spark cut is normally the thing that you do, and that's why you hear the engine sort of making that horrible coughing and spluttering noise, but that may have put stress on components. I remember a few years ago, Paul, and I think you'll remember this too, that after a particularly messy Le Mans the previous year with safety car interventions aplenty, Corvette decided that they were going to be clever and have a safety car limiter for the drivers, so that when they were behind the safety car, they hit the safety car limiter, it put the car on a different map.
It was a map rather than a limiter,
yes,
I think.
So, exactly. But it set up an odd resonance in the prop shaft, of all things, and caused them to have a transaxial failure with one of the cars.
Both, wasn't it, in the end?
Sorry?
I just wonder if it was both in the end.
Yeah, it might have been.
It might have been the only time that neither Corvette finished. But no, I mean...
so these things can manifest themselves in very odd ways.
Very much so. I mean, going back into the 80s when Bosch was being clever with their electronic fuel management systems, and pace cars were coming out and safety cars were beginning to happen in endurance races to neutralise the field and bring things so that marshals could do things safely. Bosch kind of suddenly realised that having multiple settings was a good idea, because until then you were basically burning the fuel during safety cars just as much as you were on full racing, or you had to be very careful with feathering the throttle and things. But
stick it in a high gear and let it tick over. That was, that's what drivers did, wasn't it? Then you put straight on the clutch.
And then Bosch started to develop these fuel management systems and fuel injection systems, and electronics just generally became more widely available and widely installed on cars.
All before you were born, Johnny.
It is, but it is fascinating to listen to the way that you have to think about not just the racing but the bits in between as well. When track maintenance or track clearance, an incident has to be dealt with, how do you change your car or add little bits to it so that it gets through that? And then you've got the extension of, oh no, but that new I don't know, the get around thing that we've managed to the workaround thing that we've now sorted has created yet another problem
unintended
and caused
consequences.
two retirements.
Yeah, unintended consequences.
I'll tell you one thing that I will say about that Audi, that will be being looked at. All of that data goes back to Audi Sport Customer Racing, because let's not forget, these TCR cars are all manufacturer racing cars. They aren't something that people have cobbled together in their shed over the winter. They've all got a chassis number, an engine number, a gearbox number. All these things are tracked, and pretty much all the big manufacturers work the same way. Audi are meticulous, with Chris Renke at the head of Audi Sport Customer Racing back in Germany, but they have helpers around the world. In the US, it's Brad Kettler, multiple Le Mans winning race engineer, and they will be taking all the download data and having a look at that when it comes back from Accelerate, and if necessary, bulletins will be sent out to everyone who's got one of those cars.
Yeah, no, very much. I mean, these teams are working very much with the manufacturer, although that itself can be a double-edged sword, because you end up having to be at the end of the telephone or an email trail saying, have you done anything about that problem we had at Silverstone yet? And they say, no, we're working on something else at the moment. And so you're kind of at the end of a trail there. But no, you're right, there is a huge amount of data going back to the various manufacturers. Just one final thing on things that used to be on cars that aren't anymore, that you're too young to remember, Johnny. I saw a lovely tweet from Andy Marriott sometime overnight saying, retweet this if your car had one of these. And then there's a picture of a choke.
Right.
I do remember chokes.
You do remember chokes?
Yes.
Oh, good.
Absolutely. I wasn't necessarily born when the cars that I was subsequently in.
Did you have a
were
car
designed
with a choke?
and built.
I bet he's never had a car with points.
I've been in
Never
Alpha
mind the
Suits
choke.
many times.
But you haven't owned one though, have you?
No.
That was your father.
Correct. But, that was on account of me being 8 years old. You could own a car at that point, but you can't drive it. Unless you've got a big field nearby.
I'm saying nothing at that point. Absolutely nothing.
Fair enough.
Yes, I bet you, as I say, I bet you haven't had a car with points and non-electronic ignition and had the joy of taking the distributor cap off and getting your feeler gauges out and scrubbing up, taking the plugs out and getting the wire brush out and all that kind of stuff. You've never done any of that, have you?
This has turned into a competition now.
Never lived.
No, obviously not.
All of
No,
your
thank
cars,
you.
open
Right,
bonnet,
I'll leave
it's
the
just a
box
big
now.
piece
I'm
of
clearly
plastic. Don't know how you dare.
Should we talk about anti-brewery? Because anti-brewery is being a hero.
Because I'm the generation where I can, tell my children and grandchildren, oh, you don't remember the days of the internal combustion engine, do you? All this electric stuff, eh? When it's all done for you. These driverless cars. I remember the days when you had to change gear yourself, and you had to steer yourself.
Can I on the subject of driverless cars, I would love driverless cars because there's times when I do want to get in back and have a snooze. However, integrating software, complicated software with complicated mechanics, and then having them all networked together so that you can drive 2 inches apart at 80 miles an hour scares the living whatnots out of me, because as anyone will ever know, integrating software, hardware and mechanics together is never as easy as it thinks. Just think to any time that you've had to put a new printer on a network, right, and tell me that you think that driverless cars are going to work anytime soon. That's all I'm saying. And by the way, if you have driverless cars, you can't have driven cars.
Yes.
It's got to be one or the other, because you can't have the interaction.
You have a road network for one, and the old road network for the...
Oh, excellent. Right, excellent. So more of my greenfields are going now,
correct.
right?
Yeah.
Right.
I'm going to talk about anti-brewery.
Anti-brewery. How is your anti-brewery?
He's doing very well. He's got the gap, and it's still a lap behind the number 100 Blake & Molan car, but has been lapping consistently quicker, and to the tune of 7 seconds a lap quicker than Robert Smith. They're getting kind of down through the fuel. They're, with kind of with 2 hours to go, getting to the point where you can start looking forward to how many more pit stops you're going to make, and whether you're going to try and get to the end of the race on one more pit stop. And I think that's what most of the guys are going to be looking at doing from here on in, one more pit stop and get them to the flag. But Anti-Brewery, as I say, lapping a good 6 seconds a lap quicker over the course of the restart over Robert Smith. And Robert Smith is also slower than Ivo Breukers at the moment. Ivo doing a great job at the wheel of the leading car 303.
The battle that we have, which is a class lead battle, is in the A3, proving, if proof were needed, that you do really only need 2 cars for a race, although there are 4 in that class. Ollie Bryant, talking about Morgan's earlier on, makes me think of me old mate Keith Arliss. Keith is probably listening somewhere. Good morning, Keith. That was 10 minutes and 53 seconds. I told you to write that down somewhere. I should have done it as well. It's now 8 minutes and 44 seconds there, as we've had a quick pit stop for the 155 TCR. Dinah Beeks was watching that.
I was. JM's just jumped in behind the wheel of the 155 and Anthony Lambert's just jumped out, so I thought Anthony would have a quick chat with you. Obviously playing it cautious during that stint.
Yeah, it was a good stint. Unfortunately, the code 60 lasted 50 minutes, I think. But then the truck was okay, it's drying now, and I think we can do it with 6.
Now, you're a little late getting to that restart. We saw you running to the car before it all got underway again. What was the delay?
I don't understand. Sorry.
You were late getting to the car for the restart. No, you were not late. No worries. How's the balance of the car now? Everything's shaped up.
Sorry?
How is the balance of the car now?
It's good. I missed a bit of rear grip, but I think the tires were destroyed. So that's normal, and we're not in the race anymore, so we're just enjoying, and let's go.
Okay, thank you, Anthony.
Thank you.
Anthony Lambert, Belgian driver, down in the pit lane.
He was late.
Yeah, he was pretending not to understand.
In fact, his team manager had to run. There was 2 minutes to go before the restart, and he was halfway down the pit lane. Right. The car was on the start grid, so it was. They ran past Martin van der Pavet, who already had the green baton held high to indicate I'm going to wave this green baton, which became a flag in a future. Yes, and so he then managed to strap himself in, but he was still strapping his hands device on as he was running along.
Oh, I hate that.
Yes, quite. Shame he didn't explain that one.
I have to go through a routine when I'm getting into a racing car, and I don't like to be rushed. A bit like you. coming out in the morning and not having to eat your breakfast. So lovingly and carefully prepared by
It
your
was.
host.
No. I was very grateful. It was just the plan was we weren't having breakfast.
I know, when I got up early.
You said, have that bacon and egg sarnie then at 1 minute past 6, but we were leaving at 6.
Yeah, all right.
And it was a very nicely cooked egg in that the yolk was going to go as soon as I
What was it going to do?
It was going to go just as I bit into it. And I knew I couldn't take it with me, otherwise I was going to ruin my very nice...
The yolk would have been on you.
Hey! He might have been up all night, but he's still
there. He's still on it, isn't he?
Absolutely right. Sharp as a knife, Paul Trustwell.
Sharp as a cricket stump. Always. I envy any driver that can get ready quickly to go in a car, because I hate that. If I'm told to be there at a certain time and that's 10 minutes before the car's going to come in, I'm there 10 minutes before that, ready, helmeted, hands device. I have to say, I'm not one of these people who can fasten the hands device, put the hands device on the shoulder, then put the helmet on, then fasten the hands device. I'll fasten them together, slide the hands device over my shoulders, and then put the helmet on, tighten it up. And I want my gloves on, and I want to be stretching my knees so that I'm ready to
mentally
get in.
knowing you've got more than enough time. I mean, you can do it in a set time frame, but just know, I mean, it's that, less haste, more speed saying, whereby you're just slightly more chilled and you can just go through the motions, and then you've got a bit of extra time once everything's in place to gather your thoughts.
That's why I never get out of a car in a collecting area. I strap myself in with the car at your pit, if you can, or your paddock area, and if you're doing a sprint race, and you get yourself strapped in, and then I go, and even if you're waiting half an hour, which sometimes you are in the collecting area, sometimes more, depending on how long the previous race is, never get out of the car. So I've got myself comfortable at that point.
Yeah.
I know. That's... Bruce?
Well, it's that thing where you go through the process. I don't really necessarily think, way back when I did it a little bit, was you get ready. I'm pretty calm about all that, and then you get your helmet on, your balaclava on, your helmet on, and then you notice your earplugs sitting on the pit wall. You think, do I really need them? Because frankly, with the gloves, you just put your gloves on, right? But there's that moment when you transfer from, right, kit on, now I'm in the car, then you move up another gear as you sort of reappraise what mistakes you're going to make over the next 10 laps or whatever. Have you got time to fit them all in? I always managed. But really, it was the earplugs things that always got me. So maybe I'm partly deaf now because of it. Who knows?
That's one of the reasons. Thanks, Bruce. That's one of the reasons that I don't want to be rushed. So I don't get to the stage. I've seen drivers trying to get in cars on a driver change, and you look at them and they go, they haven't got the balaclava on underneath that helmet. Now, I don't even ride a motorcycle without a balaclava, or not a fireproof one, but it's something that I do now before I put a helmet on, and it's because of that. Diana Binks is the second voice in the pit lane this morning, and the Accelerate Motorsport Audi is back in the pit lane. This is the car that's had ongoing electrical gremlins, Di.
Yes, it is, John. It's just come in. I'm up the other end, but I am walking up. But I can see it's going back into the garage. They're reversing back in now, which is a shame. They were definitely shaking their heads, and I asked them after what the problem was, and they really couldn't give me a definitive answer. So they sent it out for a couple of laps to see, but that's probably been out, I would think, 5 minutes, and it's back in.
Thanks, Di. We'll wait for your report. Couple of laps then, and.
Just what you take your car into the garage, say, I've got this funny little glitch that happens when I'm doing 40 miles an hour and I turn the windscreen wipers on. You get the car back, it's working, you phone up the garage, great job, you fill in their little form that says, are you completely satisfied with your experience?
Yes, I am.
And you say, yes, I am. And then 2 days later, it does it again. And you kick the cat when you get home.
Give me that survey back. I haven't finished with it.
I was going to say, Andy Bury is going at still going great guns, but I think he's going to run out of laps. We're into the last 2 hours of the race now. I don't know if we had to do anything at 2 hours before the end of the race, but if we did have to do something,
that was 5 minutes ago.
That was 5 minutes ago. So we're into the last 2 hours of the race, and a lot of the old Creventic rules of things that happen in the last 2 hours of a race don't apply because we don't have of those rules anymore, so we don't have to worry about that. But the key rule is, of course, if you get in the car now, you can stay until the end of the race.
That is
because,
a good point.
So getting into the car now will mean that you can stay in it till the end of the race. However, if you get into it in the next, let's say, after about half an hour, then you'll have enough, in fact, probably even in the next 15 minutes, you'll probably be able to put enough fuel in it to get it to the flag.
Wow, we're that close to the last pit stops.
So we are getting to 15 minutes out from when you'll be able to get enough fuel in the car to get it to the checkered flag. So that's something to bear in mind as the A3 class leader makes a pit stop. Number 131 in the pits.
Right, so Martin Kroll, the time had come down to 7:39, but that included Martin coming into the pits, his lead over Ollie Bryant in the similar M235, the duo racing car. But Ollie is clearly charging along. I'm offered this, Johnny, for us having that little bit of back and forth, all friendly banter, obviously, about Johnny being so young he can't remember chokes and things like that. Matt Gee, who is the brilliantly monikered on Twitter Stiffy Van Dormera, which is, for those that don't listen to Midweek Motorsport on a Wednesday at 8 o'clock UK time, and why don't you, that came about from spell check on Stoffel Van Dorn. It comes up as Stiffy Van Dormera.
Right.
Blackpool Johnny, I hear, is now going to buy a steam engine so he can win the argument of who has the oldest technology.
Well, I'd think about it, certainly. You can buy very small steam engines on a...
I remember when those were, the thing to have. You had to build it yourself and then...
Yeah. Some kind of magazine supplement that went on for about 200 weeks.
A Meccano for a while had a steam engine that you could bolt into a Meccano set, ran on little sort of like lighter fuel type thing, and you put a little underneath the boiler and it steamed, and you had to build. I'm sorry,
It's turned into a competition again, isn't it?
In the days before Lego.
Yeah, well, Meccano was a procedure to that, wasn't it? But okay, right. Well, I'll get on eBay. I'm sure I'll be able to find a steam engine of some description, and then I will have trounced the two of you.
And then you'll be able to say Yarbu Saxton Ferris. J.M. Littman's going great guns in the Baz Cooten Cupra, number 155, and just turning through Luffield at the moment. JM, as ever, great entertainment during the beginning of the red flag, because he was down there trying to work out how everybody else had been managing to find their way around.
Johnny's now looking at pictures of steam engines that he can sit on and put on a
just put an offer in. He's put a bid in.
That's Ian Allen's place. Ian Allen, rest in peace. Great Cockcrow Railway, which is probably not very far away from.
It's not far from me.
From Port. It's not very far from Brooklands, actually. Just the other side of the M25.
Is that the track layout?
Yeah.
That one there?
Oh yeah.
Oh my goodness.
We
used to have a little oval track at Roker Park, not the football ground obviously, but the actual park part of Roker Park, and I think that is still there, where they have the local model railway meeting, and it's sort of kidney shaped oval.
Yeah.
And it's raised up so that you can have legs dangling around the side on some of the trains, and I remember going there and being amazed at that. There's also a boating lake there where they used to have RC racing.
There you go.
There used to be a model railway track where the McLaren technology now is.
It might still be there.
It's not there, no. Part of the deal that Ron did when he bought the site was to relocate Mizzen's Railway to Bars Lane. And so the railway is now much larger than it was, but it's not at Mizzen's anymore. It's over at Bars Lane, but it's still called Mizzen's Railway.
155 pushing along very quickly. JM Yari Matti, as we've told him this weekend, and just called him this weekend.
So he's doing rally crossing, is he?
Yeah, he's doing a bit of rallying. Yeah.
Off the road, at least.
Yeah.
Straight on at the Beckett's S's.
Well, I think that was a reasonable line through there. If
it's fastest.
I think it was us talking about old things. He decided to do Beckett's the old way when it didn't turn. We went left at Maggers, but then you went straight on towards Beckett's, which was a tight right-hander, slowest corner on the circuit at that time.
Little black book among them is still watching and worried about the 303 rear wing. That's been like that for a very, very long time. Not the first time it's happened, although we were told that it didn't have that much aerodynamic deficiency from that?
Rick was specifically asked, can't remember by which of our pit lane reporters, one of them did, and he said it wasn't a problem and it didn't have much effect, but if it did start to have an effect, they would come in and fix it, but it doesn't worry them at all at the moment.
Right turn lover offering for the technology debate with Johnny. Pretty sure Johnny's using technology even older than steam engines, as he's got anything with wheels on. That's pretty old technology now.
True, yeah, wheels have been around for a fairly long time now.
And I've
certainly before I was born.
Yeah, just a bit. And I've heard that he's
you
now
invented it, haven't you?
Reinvented the wheel, yes.
I've heard that he's ditching his sat-nav.
Only choking.
I've heard he's ditching his sat-nav now and buying a sextant and a compass. Let's go down to Diana Binks to restore some order and some sanity here. Be the voice of reason, Di.
I'll try very hard. I've come back to Accelerate for obviously to have a look and see what's going on with the 106, and David Markinson's, I caught him in the garage, so I just thought, David, I'd ask you, everyone's got their head into trying to work out what's going on. What can you tell us from what the team have said to you?
There've been power problems with the car. It's been cutting out, and they brought it in a couple of times, and the Audi Sport guys have had a look at it and plugged in the analyzer thing, and it turns out it's a wastegate on the turbo's gone, so they've got to replace the turbo now. But the problem is they've got to wait for it to cool down, and it'll take about an hour for it to cool down, and it could take an hour and a half to change the turbo. So we're kind of running light on time now, so they're going to give it a go. The Accelerate guys are doing a great job and going to give it a go and see if we can get back out again. So fingers crossed.
Well, that's an awful lot of work, so we can't fault their enthusiasm for trying to make it to the end. Yeah, exactly. It's a good team effort. The guys have worked so hard so far. Had a few incidents during the night, but we're going well. So we just have to, fingers crossed we can get back out and finish the race. So that's what it's all about at the end of the day. Had a good race. It seems unusual, though, for the Audi to have had so many sort of gremlins, to be fair. Yeah, I don't know. It's new. The car's new to me. I haven't driven one before. I don't know much about them, so you kind of think they should be reliable. But, things happen, don't they? So it's motorsport. All right, David, thanks very much. Glad you're still enjoying it. Now, I think, actually, as we're here at Accelerate, the 134 Mini's coming as well. So these guys are incredibly busy down here.
It's a good point, Ty. Two different cars. Both have had more than their fair share of issues. After 22 hours completed, Red Camel Jordan, a little bit more than that now, Red Camel Jordan.nl with the 303 Orange Seat leads. It had Ivo Breukers at the wheel when it's just gone into the fuel station, and Ivo is out of that car. Robert Smith was in the 100 for Team Bleekemolen, and that car is in the pits in second position. Antiburi, who has been running very well indeed in the third place. LMS Racing by Baz Curtin. Seat in third position. In the classes, Hofer Racing powered by Bonk Motorsport. That car was being closed down on by Ollie Bryant, Martin Fisher, and that was 12 minutes, give or take. 11 minutes, give or take, 10 minutes 53, wasn't it? That's now down to 6 minutes and 12 seconds, those two battling for the top step of the A3 podium. And in the top 10 now, PDM Motorsport in the 999 BMW Z3M Coupe is now third place in A3 after the troubles for Synchro Motorsport. And below the top 10, everyone has had problems. Synchro's had a new engine. Dan Whaler back out in that car. Accelerate, we know the problems with that Audi, and that looks like they're going to have more issues. And the Mini has had a new engine as well. Team Hyundai Denmark ran out of suspension parts and departed the field of battle some time ago, and the motorsport development car had a gearbox issue, I think I remember Paul saying earlier on. So that's how they stand after 22 hours. I mentioned the 303 car leading. Ivo Breukers brought it in. He's handed it over now, which means he can speak to Bruce Jones.
Ivo, the 303 Red Camels Seat still has number one on the window. That's a good sign. It's still leading the race. Looked at the state of your tyres when you came in. You've got every last bit of rubber off those, haven't you?
Yes, I have. I had a huge responsibility, of course. It would be most easy to put Rick or Kalko in the car. But he said, no, Dad, you have to drive. So I did it, and it was really, really difficult. And we put it all on slicks. We were out, and we changed the rain tyres. And from the beginning, I was really taking care of the tyres because we only can lose, nothing to win. And that worked out pretty well, and in the end, the last few laps, I was able to push a little bit more and have some fun, but the rear left was almost gone. But I brought it in, I'm happy, I did my job, and that was up to Rick.
Good. So coffee and a second breakfast, you know, Ivo, and on to the end of the race. It looks like quite a comfortable cushion over the Team Bleekemolen Seat, but as we've seen, conditions have been tricky throughout this race. Absolutely. Rick is now out of slick, so he has to be careful. I guess our team has given the right instructions, but you know, it's 24 hours race. This is endurance, so everything can happen, also mechanically. So we have to look after the car, and it seems that we lack a little bit of top speed already from the second part of the race, but the temperature is good, so yeah, let's see. We can't always tell from the outside. We see you've had a slight problem with the rear wing. Have you had any other mechanical problems?
No, not really. For the wing, we put a band on it to prevent it a little bit, and it's still on there, so it has to keep on there, I think, for 1.5 hours, then we'll be fine.
Good stuff. So the lead is about 6 minutes at the moment. Let's hope that Rick and... is Konstantin going to get a go before the end?
Probably not, because we can reach to the end, and it makes no sense to take an extra risk.
Excellent. Thank you. Great drive there, Ivo.
And Paul Trustwell, you know, the leader of the race has the most to lose by doing things they don't need to do. So they've waited until the fuel window is open till the end of the race, and they've put Rick Breukers into it.
Yeah, 42 laps, I reckon he's going to be sent out to do between now and the end of the race, just on his out lap at the moment. So
if we see that car again, that would be a surprise in the pit lane.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, that's as I say, these are the final pit stops for the first three. In fact, all three of the top three, in fact, top four have been into the pits now, because this is basically what you do is you put as much fuel as you can get into it. Then you know the fuel tank is full, and you know you can do an hour and 45 minutes on a full tank of fuel with one of these cars. And as I say, the only hard bit is then just to work out whether it's going to be 42 laps or 43 laps.
And that actually has worked really well in terms of stint times as well, because it was 6:45 that the stint length started, and we're now at 8:45, so that's taken everybody pretty much to the end of their stint length, so nobody had an advantage there. It wasn't like as if people could say, well, you know, we'll go on a bit longer and hope for a code 60 and do our last pit stop under a code 60.
Correct. And I mean, the other advantage is probably the way that the lap could rolled was because we had that code 60 immediately following the green flag, i.e. the restart. It gave people the opportunity, as Ivo said, to come in and make a pit stop and tune the car a little bit. I mean, put wet tyres on it when because he'd been on slicks when the red flag was shown. But to make sufficient changes to the car to make it suitable for the conditions. It was interesting. I had a conversation with Ivo during the night whilst the race was still on, and at that point he was concerned about the conditions. He said, you know, Rick's out there and he's complaining about the fog, and he said to me, I think they should stop the race. And I said, well, you're complaining to the wrong person. And he said, but even then I can't complain to race control, because they'll just say I want the race to be stopped because we're leading it. Because of course the big benefit that Red Camel had, they'd got the advantage in the race by that point because of being able to do their brake change under the code 60. Or the disc pad change, not the disc change, just the pad change. They were able to do that under the code 60. That had given them the advantage. And then, of course, with the cars sitting for 4.5 hours on the grid during the red flag period, there was nothing that could go wrong. You know, they're not putting any stress on it. So from their point of view, they were sitting pretty for 4.5 hours through the night, when otherwise, you know, that it would have been a proper motor race. You know, we said that you know, the Bleekemolen and the Red Camel cars were having a big dogfight.
We've seen in the past here at this race that, you know, the last few hours of a turbocharged TCR type car with Bleekemolen had bossed the race a couple of years ago, and then 8 o'clock in the morning, poof, white smoke, and it ended up grinding to a halt in the Formula One pits, if I remember correctly. And
exactly right, and that was when Richard Roberts managed to get through and win the race.
Yes,
it was only as a result of that car's retirement that Martin Short's Roll Centre BMW was able to take over in the lead of the race. That was 2 years ago. Last year, it all came right for Blake Molan. So you know, it was a faultless run, and they dominated the race, quite frankly. This year, they've had a fault-free run. There's not been much that's happened to that car, just as nothing much has happened to the 303. I mean, the 303 did have a little opsy into the gravel, didn't it, when Evo caused a code 60. But apart from that, mechanically, these two cars have been pretty solid. But Blake Molan has just not quite had the same efficiency in the pits, and you know. It would have been interesting if we'd have, for example, added the 4 hours on at the end of the 10:30. But
the 4 hours, the 4 hours and a bit that we've lost as well. That also means, right? You're absolutely right, Paul. Nothing can go wrong with the leading car, but it also means any pace advantage that respective drivers had is negated.
Exactly.
So you know, you make your plans very carefully and go, right, okay, these guys, we've seen them, they can do this lap time, right? If we put him against, who have we got left? It's like, you know, at the end of a limited overs cricket match, who's got the overs left? Right, so who do we need to put in the car, or who can we put in the car? Right, okay, we can put him in. All right, Sebastian can do a bit more. Let's put him up against that driver, because we know he can take 3, 4, 5 seconds a lap off it. That's been taken out of the equation at this point.
Exactly so. If either of those teams would have had an advantage in the kind of conditions that we had overnight, I have to say that it's the Red Camel team, because let's just make the supposition that the reason why Blake Molan is occasionally a little off the pace is because the drivers are being cautious. Under instruction. It's not that they're being unnecessarily cautious, because the conditions have been so difficult. The caution is the right way to finish first you have to finish, and they have been cautious. And if you know, for example, if Evo's off into the gravel had caused a mechanical problem on the car, then Blake Molan would be sitting very pretty indeed at this stage.
And let's remember the other difference between these. There are a couple of differences between these two cars. The Blake Molan car has a sequential gearbox, much more of a racing gearbox, whereas the Red Camel car has the DSG, that's the standard gearbox. Double clutch, still has cogs in the gearbox. It's not a torque converter automatic, but and we've seen this amply demonstrated from the onboards. The 303 car has the ability, with its tractive suspension system, to change suspension settings on the fly in changing conditions, potentially even at different parts of the circuit if you really wanted to be able to change front and rear damper stiffness and the pitch and roll sensitivity of that Seat. And whilst most races you would set that up for one setting for wet tyres, one setting for dry tyres, and set that up in free practice and pretty much leave it. Here, that has been a boon, Johnny, for the guys to be able to say, right, we run the first 10 laps on this setting, and that gets a little bit of heat into the tyres. Then we'll go to the midpoint of the setting, and then at the end, when things are starting to wear out, we go to a different setting.
Yeah, I mean, it was even put to the guys that are running the 303 and have this tractive system installed. Could you adjust it for every corner around a lap? And the answer was, well, you could, because it takes milliseconds to change from one setting to another, but that would just mean the driver was far too busy and kind of wouldn't have any consistency at all, wouldn't know where they were. So better to spend a few laps in setting 1, let's say, move to setting 3, a slightly tauter suspension setup for the car as it's then up to temperature, and then as it gets lighter, as the fuel burns off, maybe move to a 3rd setting.
Spot on 6 minutes, the lead now. It was 6:04 when they came into the pits. Rick Broikers getting up to speed. Martin de Groot getting up to speed as well. 3:03 to 100 is first and second, and that's 6 minutes. The other battle that we're looking, and again, this is for first and second, although in the other class, in the A3 class, down now. Oh, I'll have to wait for the car to come across the line. I think it was about 5 minutes the last time I was looking at Ollie Bryan catching my Martin Fisher, is it?
It's now 7 minutes, yeah.
Right.
So that's gone up, and I just wonder if that was a longer...
5 minutes 17 lap from Ollie Bryant last time around. So he didn't come into the pits. So we'll keep a notice, a look on that as we go back to Diana, our pit lane team, working hard to get through all of the teams this morning and find out how they're feeling as we're in the run to the flag live here from Silverstone.
I'm with Konstantin Kalko in the 303 Red Camel Jordan car. Konstantin, I just interrupted your phone call. I do apologise, but we wanted to have a chat with you. You've done an amazing job all weekend. It's been tricky conditions in the car. How would you describe it from your seat?
Hey, actually, it was really fun to drive. This is my second time in my life in front-wheel drive car. So the last time was like 4 years ago, and I had to learn from the beginning. And it was really fun. I really enjoyed the car during the dry sessions. It's really good handles and very quick speed. But yesterday night it was so crazy. I mean, like it was amazing actually to drive, but I was scared actually.
It looked incredibly challenging, and you did a great job in difficult circumstances. But I guess the whole objective is that you want to win this race.
Yes, we try to get the best results from this race, and we all push to almost to the limit. But of course, we want to bring the car in one piece. So, yeah.
What's the feeling in the team at the moment?
Actually, everybody is tired, but I think I see the positive vibes in everybody because we are in P1, and you can hear that they are there. Yeah. So, yeah, we're good. We're good.
And a great car.
The car is nice. The setup is nice. Team works very well. So I'm happy.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Konstantin Kalkos talking to Diana Binks down in the pit lane. Diana will be taking her leave from us shortly, as will Bruce, and we're going to let those hard-working pit reporters make their way back to their respective domiciles, and so we'll say thank you to them just in case we don't hear from them on the air again. Hard work throughout very, very difficult conditions over the last few days. Our thanks to them on your behalf, wherever you're watching or listening around the world. Paul, the respective pit stop times are important in the calculations for who is doing what to who, particularly in A3.
Yeah, this is just going back to that A3 class gap, which has, let's say, shot up, but expanded a little bit. Ollie Bryant losing out to Michael Fisher in the Hoffa BMW. I sometimes call it this Bonk. It's Hoffa Racing powered by, spelled the German way, Bonk Motorsport, the 131 car, which Michael Fisher was driving. A much faster pit stop for the Hoffa racing car. 1 minute 20 seconds they were in the pit lane. That's from pit in through the tyre change and the refuelling. It's all together. 1 minute 20 seconds for the Hoffa racing car, number 131. 2 minutes 55, so a minute and a half longer for the number 235 Duvo car, Ollie Bryant. So that's at least partially an explanation of why that gap has gone up now to over 7.5 minutes.
Ollie generally quicker, and we'll go to the end, I guess, then in that 2:35, with coming on towards the last hour and a half, 90 minutes to go. There'll be no changing ends after 45 minutes. We'll go straight through to the checkered flag. We're live from Silverstone trackside here, with a Sunday morning that is beginning to be a sunny Sunday morning on Mothering Sunday here in the United Kingdom, and it's all live here on RS1. So Johnny, last hour and a half, and a small but perfectly formed field has kept us interested, and certainly with the battles for both of our classes here, around about 6 or 7 minutes between them. I mean, that wouldn't even be a lap at the Nürburgring, Nordschleife. It's a couple of laps and more here, but certainly nobody can rest on their laurels there. As we heard from Konstantin Kalkos with Diana, these are quite nervous times for the leading car overall.
Well, you've worked all this length of time, 22.5 hours, to build these leads that, appear reasonably comfortable on the timing screen. but that's because everything's going fairly well at the moment. All the driver needs to radio back is a slight knocking, banging sound, a niggle from the rear that they can't identify, something that is unexpected, and a trip to the pits might very easily result in a 10-minute pit stop, and then, you know, everything is up in the air. So that's why we pay attention to these 24-hour races throughout their duration. And 90 minutes to go. It's starting to settle into a rhythm now, and everything stayed the same, then this will be a comfortable victory. But as we know from covering motorsport for all these years, anything can happen.
131, Martin Fisher with the mainly white BMW 235i, built as a cup car by BMW M Sport, primarily for its own class in VLN racing on the Nordschleife. They've been a great hit, these cars. Not sure what the replacement to these cars will be. Possibly a M Series, 1 Series M TCR car, waiting for Jens Markart from BMW to get back to me on that.
Michael Schrei, though in the end, Michael Schrei, of course, not driving the car at the moment, but on the driving strength, not only in the VLN style car, VLN champion this year, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Last year, 2017 VLN champion. So he certainly is the man for the job. And I'm just thinking, John, that car is probably going to need to make a splash and dash to get to the flag. Its last pit stop, which was that shorter pit stop, was earlier on. It was just after the 10-hour mark, so nearly half an hour ago now. And I've got a feeling that they're going to need to stop again before they get to the end of the race.
Holgaard Motorsport, 4th position in their Golf at the moment. This is the 102 car. Roy Edland, the Norwegian driver. That's an all Scandinavian crude car. Roy, not last time around, but the time before, lit up a bit of green on the timing screen with a 220.6. That car's fastest lap of the race. Synchro are back in. The bonnet is up on the Honda, and there's steam coming out.
In fact, it's the third time that's happened. There seems to be some kind of airlock in the cooling system since they changed the engine.
The cooling system in the previous engine as well, they thought it was a split hose, didn't they?
Yeah, there was a split hose.
Right.
So that was the issue. But let's say what they seem to have had is an air bubble in the cooling system somehow. So just occasionally, it's like bleeding your radiators. You let one bubble out, but then there's another one that still has to pop out. So hopefully they're keeping the temperatures under control on the Synchro car. So we'll keep an eye on that one. I won't say glorious sunshine, but we are in a little bit of sunshine now, which must not only bring out the smiles, but bring out Nick Damon.
Yes, it does. The sun shines on the righteous, and Nick is in the pit lane heading down towards Synchro for the final pit shift of the weekend.
Yeah, it's time for the part-timers to turn up, isn't it, really?
You said it.
Well,
you're the only person I know who works pit lane with flexi time. Well, it's extraordinary.
If you're working out the shifts, doing the work, that took a long time to work out. You know, it's a. So the car, with the Synchro car now, it's a bit of a wander down the pits. It's up on the jacks. It's free of any form of driver. Just constantly looking at it out the front. It's Alan James. Is that it for it now?
No, it's never say never, but. No, we're not sure. There seems to be a hose that we split on the first engine that caused it to overheat. It's possible this hose has gone again, and we don't know why, because it's a standard part and we've never had that issue before. So we're going to put the slicks on it. We're going to let it cool down, top it back up with fluids, check that hose when it's a bit cooler, and we'll get back out. But maybe just a couple of laps at the end.
Is it a hose that runs near some sort of belts or pulleys? A chance it could be fouled, or is it just a strange fatigue situation?
We don't really know, because it's a standard, the engine's completely standard and all the hoses are all standard. That routing is the same as the road cars, and we never have an issue on our road cars. So we don't know why this hose is causing that issue. It does look like it's the same as we had at the beginning of the race. We thought we'd counteract or found the answer to it, but maybe not. Back to the drawing board.
So just a couple of laps to celebrate the end for you to come then.
Yeah, it's the last outing for this car. Our new FK8's come in, so that's over in Geneva at the moment, as we said before. But it would be nice to have a proper run with this one. You know, the Cup cars are always going to be very tough to beat, and they're very quick and very competitive cars, and we're hoping to be able to race the Z4 next door, but unfortunately not. We just haven't quite got it today.
Thanks, Pete. And hopefully you get those 2 laps. Cheers, mate.
The Mini is back out, the one of the other cars that's had the engine swap. The Accelerate guys and the Synchro guys vying, as Paul and I were doing with Johnny, for who's older and less technically adept. Accelerate and Synchro vying for who's worked the hardest in the pit lane, I think, this weekend. And the great part of this is, even with a smallish field, we've still had plenty of action on the track. But in endurance racing, it's not just about that. Hashtag this is endurance, and this is emotion too. So whilst our TV audience are looking at some of the personal highlights and looking at some of the characters in and around the pit lane, let's not forget this is the second endurance race for some of the drivers, including the man who's leading the race. That's how old I am, that I can crack jokes like that. Our TV audience coming back after those endurance emotional highlights, as we're now well inside the last 90 minutes. Johnny Palmer is alongside me, as is John. No, I'm John. I clearly didn't have quite enough sleep last night. Paul Trustwell, Johnny Palmer and me, John Hindhaugh, in the booth. We've heard from Nick Damon, who'll be going through to the checkered flag before he jumps in the Quadrifoglio and disappears quickly. Joe Bradley is the other voice down there. And Joe, what update do you have for us?
Well, I've just,
Good morning,
obviously
by the way,
I've been
sorry.
listening and watching, but just wandering up and down the pit lane, I've just come across the Accelerate Audi boys, in difference to the Accelerate Mini boys, and they're still grafting away. Now, if you bear with me, we're going to hopefully keep our cameras trained on the front of that car, which is having a lot of attention, but I can just speculate. Let's have a word with the chief engineer. Where's Dan? He's gone. He's gone.
Well, that's the issue.
I can't believe that.
That's the issue. That's no wonder. The chief engineer's left. He's done a Damon. What?
Oh, there he is. Where's Dan?
Yeah, Dan's off helping these boys in the truck.
Right, do you know what's going on? Sorry, what was your name again? It's Ollie, isn't it?
Yeah, Ollie.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Ollie,
yeah.
Come and tell us. Viewers, the cars, you know, it's been a very tough race. The word is, you know, you only need 2 cars to make a race. We've got 14, and it's been all sorts of soap operas behind every garage door this weekend. What's your soap opera so far? What's happening with the Audi?
Tell me about it. Well, we started to have a bit of an intermittent problem last night where we were losing, or the car was going into like a limp mode. So we've been working on that. We changed throttle positions and things like that, which solved it last night, but the issue came back this morning.
What's happening now? We're about I believe we've discovered that it's a 2-hour job and we're an hour into it. Are we ahead of schedule, do you think?
Yeah, so the root cause of the issue we were having last night turns out to be the wastegate actuator for the turbo. So the boys are doing a turbo change on the fly at the moment. Seat and Audi reckon it'll take them 2 hours, and we started at 2 hours towards the end, so we'll see if we can beat them.
Well, I hope you do all, because it's all about, you know, people say about why do this when, you know, you're tootling around now, you've lost so much time. Why didn't you just pack up last night, especially when the red flag came out? It's not about that, though, is it? It's about the challenge of finishing, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you're going to take that attitude, you may as well not be here. You know, we put the work in to turn up. These boys all deserve everything they get out of this. So, you know, we don't go home until we have to.
That's the spirit of. Hashtag this is endurance, is this thing. Thanks all, thanks for that update. Let's get down to the other end of the pit lane where Nick Damon is with the 175, the Seat, the Baskooten car.
No, it's the 155, your 20
sorry.
And a man who appears in this show more often than I do, it's J.M. Lippman, Jean-Michel... Jerry Mack. Are you doing Navara? We've got to think up a new one for that.
Yeah, I think so. I might be in an Audi R8 at the moment.
Could you think of your own one and text it to us?
Yeah, Jägermeister, actually. I was quite...
What, because you drive like a bomb?
Well, I was like, a bit like Obelix. I think I was dropped in a vat of Jägermeister when I was younger. This is going very strange, isn't it?
I just think I'm not looking at exceptional strength. You do have the rotundness of Obelix, but never mind. Let's talk about your run. You just hopped out of the 155. Last time we talked to you, I think, was like about 10 o'clock at night, and you weren't very happy. You happier now?
Yeah, it's really tricky out there for... and you're kind of split, you know, what do we do with tyres? And I thought, listen, let me put wets in the rear and go out on slicks. It definitely wasn't all wets. It was marginal on slicks, but it was definitely the wrong choice. My mistake. And after 4 laps, I was kind of regretting it big time. But, you know, kept it on track and, you know, modified my driving a bit and changed the brake bias. And for that, I'm quite, you know, happy that I realised what I was doing wrong.
For the 2 or 3 of us who haven't driven a powerful front-wheel drive car in the damp at Silverstone, what does having wets on the rear do to the car handling-wise, and why was it a bad decision?
The idea behind putting wets was just give it a bit more rear stability, because you don't really want the car stepping out sideways in every corner. So that's what I wanted to do. That's why I've been suffering a lot for the whole race. So that was the idea, was just actually a bit more stability on the rear. The problem is it went the opposite way because the rears just went to jelly. So every time you turned in, it went sideways anyway, which was fun. And quite enjoyable, you know, good for driving skills and stuff like that. But it was 50% the wrong decision or 50% the right decision.
Well, you're halfway there, so that's right. Jem, thanks, mate.
Thanks, guys. Thank you, everyone.
Jari Matti, as we've given him the moniker this weekend, Jari Matti Litzman. We'll have to think of another one for Navarra, which is the next stop on the Creventic Tour of Europe for the 24-hour TCE Series cars. And check 24hseries.com for all the details. I can hear in the background that as of about 5 or 10 minutes ago, from 9 o'clock in the morning, we're back on the PA as well as 16:02 AM here at Silverstone. Thanks to Paul Goodall and his hard-working team for all of their assistance over the weekend, and indeed everyone here at Silverstone. Life's been made very easy this weekend with the combination of Creventic and the organisation of Silverstone and their events team as well, and technical teams, and also a big mention for the track services recovery team and of course all of the volunteer marshals
and
this
the
BRSCC who've been running the
meeting organisation, apart from the circuit side. And I think it was great actually when we had Martin van der Pavet up here earlier on, because you realise from talking to him how important it is that everything
gels.
Fit. Yes, I was going to try and think of a more complex word than that, but yeah, because he tried to make a complex word out of it that didn't quite work. But
a collegiate atmosphere, he says.
It all pulls people together and open up the lines of communication, and because it is a complex business organising race meetings, particularly when you're doing it in the way that Creventic does, an FIA sanctioned series coming to an FIA sanctioned circuit, yes, but you've then got not only the circuit organisation but the BRSCC club who's running it, and all of that infrastructure, and it has to all work together.
And just throw into the mix for that as well as the 155 is off, and that is the Kawasaki Racing by Baskooten Cupra, the 155 at the moment.
It's JM's car that he's just got out of, and Christian
Jepsen who's just taken that car out. It wasn't his outlap, but it was his first flyer, and he's gone off at Stowe sideways. This is the very nervous rear end of these TCR cars, and particularly it would seem the Seats and the Cupras. And
it's quite a spin that as well, because on the live stream we were on board, I think, the 155 as it happened.
Yeah.
So it's gone around at least once, possibly twice. And the back end of it there, thankfully the gravel trap doing a very good job in slowing the car before it got to the tyres, and the tyres deliberately 4 or 5 tyres deep there, the tyre wall, to cushion what can be some big offs down there at Stowe.
Now, will they be able to get that car out with a bit of Marshall power? They're already on the scene, and oh, please be careful on the tyres. Getting your foot caught in the tyre is a nasty thing to do. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Marshall power. Low revs from the driver. They're bumping the car, trying to get it out there. The problem is he went in sort of sideways and backwards, and it's rather dug in. They'll give it a go, and it's under yellow flags there. Very fast approach, and I think it's going to have to be a tow. Kevin Jepsen behind the Christian Jepsen behind the wheel of that Danish driver. Very international team there. Jan Sorensen, Anthony Lambert. Sorensen Danish, Lambert Belgian, and J.N. Lippmann English by way of a Finnish name. The Lippmann part, not the Jari Matti, although I suppose that is Finnish as well this weekend. So the guy's just trying to make some inroads into the gravel by scraping out a bit under the wheel. This is very, very 1950s Le Mans, isn't it?
Yeah, going with the shovels. Yeah, there's a cutout in the fence about 100 yards down to the left, which if there is I don't know, it depends if there's a tow truck there.
Yeah.
Now telltale sign is that the marshal who stands on the podium has just nipped back, and well, we'll see. But yes, if there is a tow truck that can be brought in through that gap in the fence, then it might be possible that it can be done with a local yellow. John?
The leader in A3 is back into the pit lane. You said you thought that car might need a splash, so Martin Fisher is back in.
Even if it doesn't go code 60, he may be going, because at least he's not losing quite as much time while there's a yellow flag out on the circuit as he would be if it was fully green. So he may be doing his splash now on the grounds that it'll cost him less time to do it now than later on.
Gap is
straight to fuel, wasn't he?
Yes, he was straight to fuel. Gap is stable at 7 minutes and 30 seconds back to Ollie Bryant.
Well, it has been stable because they've been matching each other lap time for lap time pretty much.
Impressive
but of course,
by Fisher, to be honest.
Whilst Michael Fisher is stationary, though, Ollie Bryant is making progress, and he's just coming up through Luffield at the moment. So we'll keep an eye out across the start-finish line for when that car goes through.
Can Ollie go without another splash?
Yes.
Right, OK.
Well, so I say yes confidently. I'm pretty certain.
So when the Martin Fisher car comes out, the 131, that will be the real race.
Yeah.
That will be the gap. OK, fine. That's the A3 battle we're talking about, the 131 in 6th. And the 235 in 7th, the two BMW 235i Racing Cup cars.
Is Ollie coming through now, and the BMW still in the fueling area, just comes out of the pits. It's going to be absolutely nip and tuck between them. Johnny's got the tracker on.
I have, and
so it'll be a lap and a few hundred metres between them.
Yeah, 131, Michael Fisher just coming out of pit lane now. I think that's to be relied upon, but obviously the 235 was well up to speed, sounded sweet across the line that time around, and down towards Cops Corner. These are the cars that are regularly seen in the Cup 1 class in both the Creventic promoted racing and the VLN championships throughout the year at the Nürburgring on the Nordschleife.
More than 20 of them at the VLN, don't we? It's been fabulous racing in the last couple of seasons. First VLN round coming up
soonish.
It's 24th of March, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just make sure that's a Saturday.
Yes. Week after Sebring, isn't it?
So 2 weeks yesterday.
Yeah.
Week after Sebring, yes. But they are totally together now. Ollie Bryant just ahead of Michael Fisher. So that means
he's back on the lead lap.
Back on the lead lap by a matter of feet. But that will certainly focus the mind now of those at Hoffa Racing.
Oof is all I'm going to say there. give you the exact times as they come back across the line. A call as well as the snatch tractor, the JCB, has made it to Stowe Corner, and as Paul suggested, it has come out through the gap in the fence, so that will have had to drive around the infield and past the back of the Porsche Experience Centre. And now, are we going to get a code 60 for that to pull out in front of the car, or are they going to try and drag it backwards?
The purple flag is furled on the pit wall and is showing at the moment no signs of being used at all. If it would be, then a marshal would at least be unfurling it and holding it. So certainly the intention, I would suggest at the moment, John, is for that to be held with a local yellow.
Ollie Bryant due any second now. Should be coming through Luffield. Johnny stood up and leaning forward, looking to the left expectantly for the BMW. There goes Bryant, there goes Fisher.
And they were just on the same lap. But all Michael Fisher has to do is just to keep them in his sights.
No, they weren't. 3:56 from Fisher and 3:54. I would have expected that to be 55. Still showing 7 minutes and 30 seconds between the two cars. When did Ollie take his last pit stop?
12 laps ago.
Right.
Half an hour ago.
Well, I'm confused now. Having built that up, I may have slightly misled you there, but I'll wait. But Ollie was ahead of Fisher, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Ollie was ahead of Martin.
Yeah, and that margin possibly was drawn out a little bit, actually, as in the gap between the rear bumper of 235 and the front bumper of 131.
In the background, you may hear a tortured 2-litre engine as it's powering the Kawasaki Baz Kooten car on the bumpy access strip between the substantive gravel trap and the barriers. The worrying bit will be when he has to go onto the grass, which he's doing now. Christian Jepsen just easing the car gently, trying not to spin the front Hankook tyres. All slicks on that car, and the grass still very, very wet indeed after several inches of snow, which only cleared around about this time last week. And he will bring some mud onto the circuit. Some mud? What am I talking about? Huge amount of mud and stones.
And gravel. Yeah.
He stayed off the racing line rather sensibly. And, oh, do you know what? I really like that. He's gone through the vintage part of the chicane, the
historic,
the historic section. So he can have a bit of a wiggle off the racing circuit down at the Vale Club area.
Yes, that being a little cut through, which Silverstone regulars will know exists, which is used at the Silverstone Classic meeting, which is why John referred to it as the vintage historic circuit. You
don't have to brake so much and change down so much.
Exactly, it's far kinder. It's a far kinder version of the left-hander at Vale.
Nick Damon has the man whose name's above the door of this 155 car, Baz Kooten, down in the pit lane.
But it's a conversation about the 175 car, the NKKP car, which sneaked in about while we were talking about the other one of your team cars, and I saw them holding a steering wheel. What was the problem with the car?
The pedal from the downshift was not correct on the steering wheel. I think it was kicked off by the driver who get in the car.
Yeah, so if you think about this is one of the DSGs. You've got an up and a down paddle, and was it the down or the up that had literally snapped off?
No, I think when he jumped into the car, he kicked it off. As the guy is 2 meters and 2 centimeters, so he needs to go somewhere with his legs.
So how quickly, he's been out for a few laps, how quickly did he realise it was broken, or did he just kind of come off later?
He realised it two corners before the pit entry, and then he mentioned this to us, so he was in the pit lane in 30 seconds. But we have a lot of spares, and we put a new steering wheel on, so it was repaired in 2 seconds.
Now, of course, we're waiting for one of your other cars, the 155, the Kawasaki car, to come in. That's had a difficult 24 hours. It's been in the wars, as we say in England, lots of problems.
Yeah, actually it started with high wear of front brake pads, and from then on it starts going not that good. We had to change a couple of times the brake pads, and a couple of gravel traps they've seen, and again now he's just slept out he's towed out the gravel trap. Now he's coming in for a quick check and unload all the gravel.
So it was merely a driver error in these very, very tricky conditions that put him off then? that face says it all, Baz, it's fine. Baz doesn't want to say so, but it may slightly have been.
I must give a political correct answer, but you know where the problem is in a racing car, it's always between the steering wheel and the seat. So you know where.
And that's a driver badge you should know. It's much like the water leak problems that resulted in the pistons going through the wall of a Honda engine in the past.
Yes.
I've got an electrical problem. What's that? We've knocked off the alternator with a piston.
Yeah, exactly, from the inside. Thank you, Nick. Nick Tierman down there in the pit lane. This from Wayland, who is tweeting to us at RSL_studio using the hashtag #ThisIsEndurance. He says, been really interesting to watch the TCR cars in focus without the GT3s and the prototypes, other categories taking the focus away. Easy now to see why they are so popular over in Europe. Waylands, I'm not sure where you are. Are you in Australasia, I think, from memory? I apologise if that's not the case. It's a category, Johnny, that has done for touring car racing what GT3 and GT4's done for Grand Tourers, and you know, the adoption of TCR regulations and that formula into the world, the FIA World Touring Car Championship, underlining that several times and highlighting it with a marker pen.
Yeah, it's taking the world by storm, you could say. TCR, it means that cars are very evenly matched. You can have lots of various different chassis and various car makers, different types and shapes of car, although it does tend to favour the hatchback variety or an Audi RS3 with a boot. And it is a little restrictive in the sense that you can only have a front-wheel drive car in it. Yeah. So, but I get from a costs point of view and from a competition point of view, it's worked brilliantly well in the TCR International Series. There's a Middle Eastern Series, there's an Asian Series. You know, it's worldwide now. America obviously are two. And in the Continental Tire Sports Car Challenge, there is now a TCR category.
Correct, and that will become the second and only second category to GT4 next year. The new Hyundai is here, making its homologated competition debut. Had some issues, suspension and driveline issues, drive shafts, I think, earlier on. All of these cars are around about 125, 135,000 euros on the button, ready to go with a manual, and basically with support from the manufacturers. I think the Hyundai is 128. And interestingly, Paul, they were never designed for endurance racing, but very quickly people realised the potential for endurance racing with these cars, and in fact pretty much all of the manufacturers now have an endurance add-on kit to actually give them a little bit more reliability and make them more suitable, and whether that's internal jacks or better lights or a bigger fuel tank, etc, etc.
That's my concern in a way about the category, because I think a category has to have an identity, and it's a bit like, I suppose, the fact that there are, for example, a Blancpain Endurance and a Blancpain Sprint series, because it's possibly taking the focus off or one or the other, because there's one customer service team, or as you say, you have to split them into two. Yeah. But somewhere down the line, you have to say, you know, which is going to take priority in our development, and it may be, particularly when you're looking at TCR, that the World Touring Car Championship, which is now running to TC, will be seen by manufacturers as a bigger pot, and therefore becomes a bigger priority to develop the car than the endurance things to develop the car. And you've got to go in one direction or the other. And I say that's my kind of concern when you start to mix sprint and endurance, and that's from the bitter experience of what happened in the early 90s when we tried to put the Formula 1 engine in the back of an endurance car and killed off endurance racing effectively. And
certainly didn't do it any good, did it?
No, exactly. So I'm not going against what you're saying about the good points about TCR, and I agree with every single one of them. I'm just kind of putting a case for the opposition, if you will, because there is that danger in my eyes that you inevitably have to focus on one or the other.
And I think inevitably that will be sprint racing because of the very nature of the initial philosophy. By the way, Willans, I was right, thank you, is in Adelaide. So thank you for where it's, I don't know what time.
A different time from what it is here.
Yeah, it's already
And they probably
tonight.
changed their clocks overnight as well.
Oh yes, those of you in the States changing clocks overnight.
I think it's 2 a.m. their
2
time.
a.m. Yes, but that's not the same everywhere, is it?
No,
So you change
but when you get to 2 a.m. wherever you are, you move it forward to 3 a.m. That's
Yeah.
a fairly simple system.
Yeah.
I think.
Which means I'm only 4 hours difference when I go to Sebring next week, and then I'm on a plane to Australia, who won't change their clocks. So that, oh my goodness, I've just realised that's a bigger swing going round. Going back to the TCR thought here. South Australia, by the way, it is coming up to 8 o'clock in the evening, so it's a half an hour as well. So Will, it's good evening to you Sunday night. Going back to the TCR, I think inevitably, because of the initial philosophy, Johnny, of that being a touring car series, that manufacturers could provide, it effectively is a customer supply car for touring car racing. What we'll see in World Touring Cars is the manufacturer teams and the big money drivers going into that, no doubt. And so clearly their focus will be on developing the very best car for those 20-25 minute races over a race weekend. We'll see them at the Nordschleife, of course, over the Nürburgring 24 weekend coming up this year again, as we've had that series there in the past, but not with the TCR cars, interestingly enough. I hope that the manufacturers are sensible, that they're in the business, are sensible enough to realise that there's still a market for a homologated kit of parts to make them more endurance friendly, because we've got a lot of people who've committed to them for endurance racing.
Yes, but would you have the endurance car if you didn't have the sprint?
No.
TCR,
No,
so
absolutely.
it's an offshoot, isn't it?
Yeah,
and we've seen that in other categories too. We talk a lot about the Renault RS01, which was built as it's principally a sprint car, but they also did 70-minute races with a pit stop in the middle, but they were never designed to do 12 and 24-hour races, and the Renault RS01 has been a race winner in that situation, but it's needed a little bit of development.
Bit of backwards engineering in some respects, because it had to be slowed down to GT3 pace. It was much quicker. So the carbon brakes have gone, some of the aero has been balanced down over, defeated, in fact, in some respects, because that was a very clever car, and it's a very competent GT car, just too quick to go into direct competition with the current GT3 formula.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, the main focus of manufacturers is going to be a World Championship, and it just so happens that the World Championship is a series of sprint races, but doing it on a greater scale around the world, doing long distance races, is certainly not going to harm TCR. So I do think they should invest a little bit of time to make sure their customers at this end of the scale of duration of motorsport are looked after as well.
I agree with you with the sentiment. I guess it's just a danger that I'm highlighting.
Yeah. No, I agree with you, Paul. I completely agree with you.
Personal best lap of the race for Rick Breukers at the wheel of the 303 leading Red Camel Jordans.NL Seat TCR class car. 2 minutes and 15.9598 it was that he just set. In fact, on the previous lap, because he got round again by the time I managed to tell you about that one. And that gap in A3, John, I think you'll be reassured to know that it's now being shown on the screens as 4 minutes and 37 seconds. So the lap has come off. I think it took 2 laps for it to come off, because it was 2 laps of a gap, and then so they have to wait an extra lap for it to come down to the 1 lap point.
I see.
Because they're effectively measuring a time to the same number of laps completed, and it took an extra lap for Ollie Bryant to complete that number of laps.
Yes, I absolutely understand that.
Glad about that.
Thank you.
Roy Edland
I
again.
I panicked myself.
Yes, yeah, as I say, it's because of converting, as it's a very useful gap to have on the screen, is a gap in time between two cars, because it gives us a much better idea of whether a gap is going out or coming down, rather than it just showing the gap as being 2 laps.
And it's actually quite unusual, quite unusual, helpful feature of timeservice.nl that when, you know, if the cars are on the same lap, you normally get the time differential between them. Once it goes out to more than a lap, you'll get the lap number, and then everybody who's on that lap, you will get a time gap too. It's quite unusual to get a cumulative time lap between cars that are on different laps, but I do find that very, very useful.
Exactly, because it gives you the opportunity to see whether a gap is coming down when it's more than a lap.
Without having to watch every single lap time and work out between 2 or 3 drivers who's actually got half a second here and 2 seconds there.
So thank you very much to Harold and Rob and the team at Time Service for providing all the information, which has run pretty well, faultlessly throughout this. And there's the only glitch that I think is on the screen is that the pit counter is 1 higher than it actually is because of the red flag. Basically, there's an extra pit stop in there, but so if you're trying to recalibrate the pit stops, then...
But they didn't come into pit lane, so why did that happen? You said they stopped them out on the track.
It was in order to avoid the cars going across the start-finish line whilst they were being pushed around under red flag conditions, or at the restart when they crossed the start-finish line, they weren't really completing a lap, they were merely going off on a formation lap. So by putting the timing system into the cars are all in the pits, the sensor for going across the start-finish line didn't work.
Disabled. Yeah, okay. Yeah, good technical. Let's go down to the pit of the 134 Accelerate Motorsport Mini, one of the hardest working teams of several hard working teams in the pit lane. Joe Bradley, Clement with Clement Tong.
Clement, you've just climbed out of the car for the final time, I would think, with 1 hour, less than 1 hour now. You've come all the way from Hong Kong to race here at the Silverstone 24 Hours. After such a roller coaster of a race for you guys, what's your feelings now after it's all done?
I think it's a really fun race. I'm sure I'll come back to do it again. And yeah, because we had a lot of the time with the car in the pit, so we didn't get to drive that much. So
you're going to have to come back and drive it some more?
Tomorrow or next year, or in Spa, in Barcelona. Yeah, we will come back with my friend, also from Hong Kong.
Are you talking to the team about running the Mini at Spa and Barcelona?
Yeah, we are in the talk, yeah, now.
What's your thought? Is this the first time at Silverstone to race?
The first time at Silverstone, first time I'm driving the Mini, and first time I'm driving at night. Right. So it's very difficult at night.
What have you been racing before back home?
I've been racing a DC5, I've been racing Lotus, and I have a TCR now.
Right.
Yep. This year I'll be racing a TCR Asia.
So you do the TCR Asia series, is that where you've been?
Right, yeah. This year I will be doing it.
All right, so when does that start?
That will start the end of March, end of this month. Yeah, in Malaysia, Sepang.
Right, excellent. And what car are you running?
And we are running a FK2. Yep, Honda FK2.
So this has been great, like a great warm-up session for your training session for the coming season.
Yes, it is. I entered this because it's an endurance race, and yeah, so I get lots of driving time. Supposed to, anyway.
Well, that's endurance. That's hashtag this is endurance. What have you found the big differences to be then, if you've come from a sprint race background, which we all have, I suppose, and then the main difference between the team effort, sharing the car with other drivers? Have you enjoyed that aspect?
Yeah, I see a lot of mechanics working on the car, which is more than we have in the sprint race. Yeah, because there are normally less problem during the race in the sprint race. If we have a problem, normally we retire the car. Yeah, so here we're spending 3 hours, 4 hours fixing the engine last night. Yeah, so.
And do you enjoy the Silverstone circuit as a track? I mean, you've had all sorts of conditions to contend with. Do you enjoy Silverstone as a venue?
Yes, it's a very technical circuit. I think, a lot of high-speed corner, much more than we have in China. Yeah, so it's a really great circuit.
It's great to see you here, Clement, and I hope we see you again in the 24H series. And best of luck with the TCR Asia series. Thanks for talking to us. Clement Tong. Thanks, Clement.
man clearly with Honda connections. The DC5 he's talking about is what we would have known as the Honda Integra Coupe, the two-door fastback with the transversely mounted front engine and running the Honda TCR car in the 2018 series, which starts at Sepang
at the end of the weekend,
over the Easter weekend. Yeah,
I think he said that in there. Yeah, he was kind of going through the same thinking process there.
Right.
He did get to that weekend in the end.
That's a nice mixture of places. Malaysia, a couple of races in Thailand, to South Korea, to the Korea International Circuit, and then finishing at Shanghai at the start of October.
I don't know the Chonbun Street Circuit, the Bang Sien Street Circuit. That's a new one on
that. And I don't know what they've run around there in the past.
GT3s by the look of it. GT4, possibly.
Yeah.
Okay. The Apex Circuit, as it is known. Paul? Oh, sorry, just before, Paul, just before, because I'll forget if I don't do it now. We're inside the last hour of the race by about 10 minutes. Your nominations, please, for the spirit of the Hankook 24 Hours of Silverstone. Remiss of me, I forgot yesterday to do a spirit of the Hankook 12 Hours as well. So if you've got some noms for that, then by all means, throw them in. The hashtag, as ever, is SOTR. So it'll be SSOTR for Silverstone SOTR, and to at RSL_studio, please. So hashtag SOTR or SSOTR. No, let's just do it with SOTR this weekend. SOTR, and we'll get them up. I'm straight away going to jump into Accelerate and Synchro from this race, because both of those teams have worked so hard. And remember, Accelerate have had two recalcitrant cars, the Audi and the Mini, two different teams of or partially different teams of guys working on each of those cars, but my goodness, they've been busy. And you know, Synchro changing an engine in an hour and 30 odd minutes, outstanding. For the other race, Nick Damon, for the 12 hours, who do you have?
I'm literally going to go against type, and I'm going to actually nominate the team that won, which is Rothko.
Yes.
Mostly because if ever there was a team that tried and tried and tried again and finally succeeded, it's Rothko. Raul Gert was a fantastic supporter of endurance racing, and they had a crash on lap 1 and thought they were going to be out of it.
Well, yeah, that's
crashed into.
True enough, someone crashed into them, yes, and Stewie Hall thought they were out. Sorry, Nick, go ahead.
I think that's absolutely the spirit of endurance racing, because they've endured not particularly so much in this race, but in the previous 2 years.
So that's a lifetime
achievement award. Yes. Finally achieving what you want, the spirit of it. Absolutely.
Okay, that's fine. Hashtag SOTR to at RSL_studio, please. Paul, any thoughts from the 12 hours before?
Well, yes, I'll refine. I'm allowed 3. I'll refine Nick's down to Raul Goethe himself. Only showed up on Friday morning and that competed in a race. Well, qualified, raced part 1, then came back to race part 2 and ended up winning the race. He didn't actually drive in part 2 because he completed his minimum driving time in part 1, but never mind, still spirit of the race. So Raul in particular, because he is the very much the boss of that team, and
well, without him there would be no team. And, you know, most of the gentlemen drivers who put money into these teams are providing gainful employment for professional racing drivers who otherwise would be out on the street.
Precisely so. The Simpson Engineering team with the winning Ginetta again going against type, but I didn't think that a prototype was going to manage to stay ahead of all of the GT cars. But
they tried their best not to at times. Their drivers did anyway.
But they did manage it, and they were very worthy winners of the 12 hours overall. So a kind of secondary vote to that. And then my third vote, just to avoid going for Accelerate, is Rick Roykers, because he was a significant input into the performance of the 964 Lamborghini in the first part of the race, and he's been a significant input into the Seat that leads the race at the moment. Yes, he was always down to drive the car, so was Stuart Hall down to drive the 106 Audi, but Rick was the third driver. Otherwise it would have been just Ivo Breukers and Konstantin Skalko driving the Red Camels car. So Rick when he was driving the Lamborghini, knew absolutely for sure that he would be having to drive the Seat later on in the race. And indeed, he drove the Seat whilst the GT cars were still out on the track. So he started his 24 hours before the 12 hours had actually finished. So I think Rick is deserving of a worthy mention.
That could have been a disaster, that, if there'd been a coming together between the two cars. That would have made him unpopular in 2 pits, and with his dad. Keen that his dad got back in the car this morning.
Wasn't that nice?
Was telling him, you know, get it out there. This will do you good, getting out there in those tricky conditions.
What Rick was up to while his dad was out, nobody will know. But so that would be my my votes.
I'll come to Johnny in a moment after we've heard a nomination from Joe Bradley for the #SOTR Spirit of the Race Award at RSL_studio, please.
Similar nomination to Nick. Same car, different colour. Mercedes AMG GT, that is. But this time the Pro Sports, the A6am podium, they had coming together with the Rofco car and had a lot of damage, and then spent the rest of the 12 hours just recovering. They didn't get rushed into anything. They stuck to their race plan, let the race come to them, and they shared what would have been the champagne if it wasn't the podium hadn't been held in a tent. So they again, once again, the Pro Sport boys, the American cars we call them, Joe Foster, Charlie Putman and Charles Espenlaub, as well as the Pro Sport team. They're there with that new car. So the adversity that they were met with, i.e. a quick repair on a brand new car, you learn a lot from those occasions, and that's my nomination.
Thank you very much, Joe. JP, I'll come to you in a second. Paul, looking at the timing screen, we have a new fastest lap in the A3 class, and it affects the battle for the lead.
Ollie Bryant, yeah, he's charging on. He's just done a 2 minutes 20.564, which is very nearly a second quicker than the previous fastest lap. So the Duvo Racing BMW, Ollie taking it to the checkered flag, trying to close the gap. He's still tantalisingly 1 lap plus 9/10 of a lap behind, but going well, and certainly they're going to have to keep an eye on that, because if there would be the slightest mistake from Michael Fisher in the Hoffa Racing BMW number 131, then Ollie is going to be crawling and getting that lap back very rapidly indeed.
Johnny Palmer, your nomination for Spirit of the Race from the 12 and or the 24.
I remember a period of time on Friday when we were convinced that cars would have to come in for wet weather tyres, and one car did not. It stayed out throughout that wet spell. It was the green GRT Grasser Racing Lamborghini Huracan, and Rolf in Eichen somehow managed to keep it on the island with rather worn, slick tyres, and we said, what is he doing? Why is he staying out?
He's
losing
10 seconds
a lap. Yeah. But they avoided a pit stop, and they avoided a second pit stop to change back to slick tyres when the weather actually cleared. So a little bit of a vote to their radar system, first of all, which seems to be better than everybody else's, but mainly to Rolf, who kept it out of the barrier somehow.
Well, he was losing 10 seconds a lap in the worst of it, but he was gaining 10 and 12 seconds of a lap as the track came back to him. And a little bit of a moment for Michael de Groot in second place, trying to go around the TCR Golf at the Beckett's S's and heading into Evo's stick, and just about getting away with that. But that's testament there, Paul, to how hard they are pushing. The gap, which went out to about 6 minutes and 10, is back down to 5:55 again. But really, we're talking about very small margins at the front of the field there, but clearly Team Bleekemolen still on full attack mode, changing tenths of seconds.
Very much so, yes, and both of them looking to get to the checkered flag without a further pit stop. I was about to sort of have a rundown of those gaps, and yeah, there's not much to choose really between Rick and Melvin's times, and provided they're both still on it, and then there's no way that either of them is going to get caught or catch the other, unless one of them has exactly the sort of moment that we saw nearly happen. However, Kari-Pekka Laaksonen in the number 129 car, nowhere near as quick as Antti Buri. I was bigging up Antti Buri earlier on because he was
the Finnish car, isn't it?
That's the all Finnish Bas Kooten car.
Not finished yet.
Not finished yet.
42 minutes.
LMS Racing is the entry, and Antti was really going very quickly and was the fastest TCR car out there at the time, but unfortunately unfortunately, Kari-Pekka isn't quite as quick and has been losing ground. Now, he has an enormous margin of some 11 laps on the next car back, so it doesn't really matter. But any chance that he had of possibly catching up with Bleekemolen car, not really possible with Laxonen's pace, I'm afraid. Roy Edlund, though, has
he's been mega.
He's been mega. He's been.
Why have I not seen? I can't remember seeing his name next to that car. He clearly has been in the Warmington-on-Sea motorsport car, the home guard machine, before. But I have to say, I've not noticed this pace before from Roy.
No, I mean they've saved him for happy hour, and it may have been much further into the race than normal, but we did have a little bit of sunshine earlier on. It's now clouding over a little bit, but it was a good way to start the morning off with some relatively cold temperatures and a relatively dry track, pretty much dry track, and as I say, we've just had the best lap of the race in A3, best lap of the race in the TCR class thus far is the Bleekemolen car. That was Robert Smith who set the time of 2 minutes 15.266. Currently lapping at about the 2 minutes 18s, but I suspect that's as much as anything else to cars being a little bit tired and drivers driving with due care. Roy Edlund just coming into the pits, in fact, John, so we'll have an opportunity with
clap for that.
Somebody to be able to have a chat with him and convey our congratulations personally to him for a good stint.
He took that car's best lap time from a 2:20 something, 21 I think. Whilst he was in it, he got down pretty quickly to a 2:20. He's ended up with a 2:18.0. He did a couple of 2:19s, then a high 2:18, and he's the best lap in that stint, 2:18.0. Now, I don't think he needs to get out of that car though, Paul. Does he? Can he go? Oh, Nick Damon can tell me, Nick.
He has got out the car. He's also, interestingly, the overalls the entire team are wearing, which are home guard, marked, are not with their own names. They're all down as Christian Holmgaard. Even the Danish driver who got in a second ago, he's one of the Danish drivers. He unfortunately. No, they're
sorry, not Danish. Sorry, I'm on the wrong car.
The Norwegian obviously Roy's a Norwegian, got out the car, but he again, you can't see the name on the helmet, and the other guy put tape on it. You can't find anything. Actually, Roy's just taken off his various accoutrements. So I'll see if I can go a quick word with Roy. That was a fantastic run. You massively reduced the car's fastest time. You must have enjoyed it immensely.
Yeah, the track is getting faster and faster, and just keeping the car out of trouble and enjoying myself.
So this obviously is it the first time here at Silverstone, is it, or have you been around here before?
I was last year, the same month.
And what other driving do you do during the season?
This is I'm only driving the Creventic series.
And historically, have you done a lot of other sort of sports car racing, tin top racing?
No, I've done a couple of years in Formula Ford, and we have done some seasons in the Danish Endurance Championship, and yeah, also the Creventic series last year, 2 races.
And so you intend being with this team for the whole series?
Yeah, the plan for this season is Imola and Spa. So, and what else we'll have to see.
Thank you. Well, a great run. Cheers.
Do you know what? That's what I like about this series, that the guys can pick and choose.
Yes.
And might not have done the same races last year, right? That those guys were here, but you've got Silverstone, you've got Spa, you've got Barcelona, you've got classic tracks, Imola. We've got Navarra this year, which is a new opportunity for these guys. All the details, by the way, www.24hseries.com. And he was breathing heavily there, Johnny. He'd been working quite hard and really enjoying himself, clearly.
Yeah, he mentions Formula Ford. I mean, I've managed to find an entry for him at the Formula Ford Festival, Brands Hatch 2002. And has raced in Formula Ford Zetec Nordic in Denmark and in Sweden too. So that's where his grounding was in motorsport.
Renault Clio as well in Denmark.
Yeah, after a little break for 6 years or so. I mean, this isn't a conclusive history of his racing. I have him down as 35 now, but lots of pace still for Roy Edlund. And he's drawn our attention, certainly.
Yeah, very good.
After a cracking stint, and it sounds like he's keen for more in 2018 with Creventic.
I do like this idea of people. I mean, you know, Creventic has relatively recently in its history, Paul, become a championship. It's an FIA-approved championship, as you mentioned earlier on. It was a loose collection of races in the past, and there are still people who decide that the championship isn't necessarily for them. Some people do, but they, you know, decide to put their hard-earned into going to places that they want to race on and tick off that bucket list entry.
Yeah, and I think you know, we were saying about this earlier on. It is a series of races that is not as serious as some other forms of racing, but at least you know as a gentleman driver that you are going to get listened to, and you get a lot of track time. I think that's the other thing that really does build it for people. You get a lot of track time in a racing environment. I mean, you know, I think we had it was Stuart Hall. I think it was either Stuart Hall or Johnny Molam who was saying that
GMO, I think,
in effect, you got 8 hours of running on Thursday here. You then had qualifying and a race on Friday, or part one of your race if you were driving a GT car, and then you've got the 24 hours or the remainder of your GT race, depending what you were doing, on the Sunday. You then get to pack up the truck by lunchtime, and you're home, in fact, by Monday.
And if you were the 12-hour races, you were gone last night.
And if you're a businessman who has to be in an office somewhere or have meetings to go to, then you can do that. So it helps. It's all done, as I say, in a very practical way, and in overall economic terms, an economic way, because it doesn't actually, in the scheme of things, cost a huge amount of money, depending what your idea of huge is. But the entry fees are relatively low. For the flyaway races, you get everything included. The transportation costs get included as well, and you know, it's a team of people who do work very well together.
Yeah, and going back to what you were saying when Martin van der Pafferts was here earlier on, our race director, how they integrate with whatever venue they go to. And I loved what he said about, you know, we go to places and, you know, when you go there for the first time, they know the track, so you are guided by them about logistics and what happens at the track. We know the cars, the drivers and the regulations. Making it a seamless feel to the weekend, as if all of these events, even the first time events, always seem as though they've been happening for years. And when you have such a big change to the schedule as we've had in relatively recent days here coming up to this event, but done in a way that is actually quite sensible and works for everybody in terms to try and make everybody's life a bit easier, you know, that's the sort of good news that comes out of that cooperation.
There's some incredible innovative thinking amongst the Creventic people, and I think that's what the other thing. I mean, this timetable here was innovative. You know, trying to run two races simultaneously is not something that would have entered the minds of some racing organisations that I can think of. Here's another example. Dubai this year, for the first time, all the cars where the air jack goes in had a little number on it. It was either number 1, number 2 or number 3. And I said to Martin, why have all the cars got this little number alongside where the air jack socket goes? He says, that's because we've equipped all the flatbed trailers with air jacks with bottles, so that they can plug in, and they need to know whether it's nozzle 1, nozzle 2 or nozzle 3 that fits that particular car. But then what we can do when we've got...
So they give them a set of adapters, basically.
Yeah, just like you do when you charge your mobile phone.
Yes.
And what they did was when the car, when a car got stopped, and at Dubai, there's not a lot of gravel, as you mentioned earlier on. It's a lot of hard standing runoff area. If a car was disabled, wheel fallen off or engine locked or something, they could go along there with some dolly jacks, plug it into the air hose, lift the car up onto the dolly jacks, wheel it onto the flatbed and take it out of the way. And we had far fewer long code 60s in Dubai for that very reason. And that was somebody thinking, how are we going to get cars out of the way more quickly? Giving it some thought, coming up with a solution, putting it in place. All the teams had to do was to put a sticker on the side of the car.
Yeah, let me see your horse. All right, that's number 2. Stick that on. Yeah, great. Simple, no cost option to the teams. You know, that's the other thing about the way the Creventic mindset is, whether it's from race direction or from the sporting regs or whatever. We have in the past had, even with the prototypes, different ways of balancing performance. But it's always about not necessarily having to completely re-engineer the car and spend hundreds of thousands of euros on it, which I think is, you know, a really sensible way to try and drive. I really hope that anyone who is listening to this, who has anything that might be eligible for Creventic racing, gets the idea that they should be taking a good look at it, because you should. Again, I'll say, I was having a long chat with somebody in this paddock who was asking me, as the 221 has problems, and that is the JW Bird Motorsport Golf. That car...
That's the Rory Butcher car. Led the first hour of this race. First 2 hours of this race.
Paul Denner behind... Dehadre, yeah, behind the...
Is that at Abbey or is that at Copse? It's the exit at Copse, isn't it? So
Copse.
Has the car... It wasn't an outlap, was it? So it was come down around Copse Corner itself.
Yeah, well, it came in down the inside of the 999 BMW M, rode the curb on the inside, and then just proving how slippery those curbs were. Complete 180. Fantastic piece of driving by Paul there, because Peter Pooper in the PDM Motorsport car was on his outside, which I was going to say his left, but it became his right because he was going backwards. It would have been very easy for him to get the car going across the road. He's pointing in the right direction now, by the way. He kept the wheel absolutely straight and allowed the car to roll backwards, which meant that Peter, whose eyes were probably very wide by that point, rapidly saw that car as a diminishing white speck in his right-hand rear view mirror. If that car had speared across, that could have been very nasty. Proof, if proof were needed there, Johnny, just how slippery it is offline, because slick tyres on the still damp part of the track, clearly getting a coating of water on it, cooling down, and then a bit of contact with the curb. That was all the 221 car needed to do a complete rotation.
Yeah, and obviously Paul was heading into Copse at a much tighter angle as well, because he was trying to get by Peter Pauper in the BMW Z3, so... more steering lock, bit of curb, greasy offline, all those things, three things combining, and he ended up on the little bit of grass between the pit lane exit road and the track itself.
Once he got the OK from the marshals, who were watching back down the pit straight here, that was good. But a ripple of consternation, barely a ripple of consternation down in the JW Bird Motorsport pit. Joe Bradley tells me, just going back to the, go and have a look at the website if you've got a car or you've got a few mates that you think you might be able to go and do some motor racing in, because I'll heartily recommend it. Having been in a Creventic paddock as a driver now, it's a great atmosphere. The racing out on the track is competitive but respectful. In some ways, it reminds me of some, and it surprises me not at all that people like Ollie Bryant and his dad are here, because it does remind me in some ways, in terms of the track etiquette, of some of the historic and post-historic racing that you have, where people aren't necessarily trying to make a name for themselves and a career out of what's going on. And indeed, we've seen in the past, Paul, have we not, that the Creventic organisation have intervened with some very capable pro drivers and sort of said, guys, we love having you here, but you have got to understand that this isn't necessarily all about the pro drivers showing just how good they are.
Absolutely, and I mean the other example of that is minimum reference lap times. We haven't had to say minimum reference lap times throughout the 24 hours because they don't exist anymore, either in this or the 12 hours. And the reason is that Creventic has rebalanced the field by rebalancing the driving time regulations such that the pro drivers have a limited amount of time behind the wheel. Now, okay,
it's a great way to do it.
It is,
and
isn't
it doesn't cost the teams anything.
You're the team manager, and you've got somebody perhaps who's bringing some money along, and you can say to the guy who's got the money, do you want to bring in a pro driver? Yes, I do, he says. I'd like to have a pro driver. Okay, so we get in, a Matteo Malicelli type of driver into our car, but he can only drive for a quarter of the race. Yeah, but that's how you balance the performance. You put him in the car, you get him to go fast, but you balance the performance by limiting the driving time of the pro drivers.
But you know what I like about that, Johnny, is, and Paul's absolutely right, it's genius. What I like about that is that the pro driver then has a somewhat modified role. yes, he's out there to drive fast when he's in the car, but his role is far more setup and mentoring and helping his co-drivers to find time, looking at the data. Right, I can't get cops right. All right, let's have a look at. Let's have a look at. All right, I can see. I'll go and stand there while you.
Yes.
That's a. You're paying him. He'll still help you. The better ones will, no doubt, and that is absolutely the right way to use the talent of those pro drivers to help bring up the standard of what we're seeing from the guys who don't race as often. And I think that's genius. It may not have been designed that way, but that's what it's doing.
Yeah, and pretty much all pro drivers will say it's far easier to be in the car than to be watching your co-driver trying to win a race, because you just get you to use a football analogy, you're kicking every ball, even though you're in the pit stop, you're turning every corner. But then to be involved directly with those co-drivers who maybe don't have quite as much of experience as the pros do, particularly with a long distance race. And so if they can get out there in the field, you know, get a quad bike or a golf cart or something and go part way around the lap just to judge the car and see how it's behaving, looking at the telemetry as well, they're earning their money in so many more ways than just doing a quarter of the race.
And look what Johnny Molam's doing, you know, with his mentoring skills. And Johnny said to me many years ago, and it's something that stuck with me for a long time, and I've had this conversation with other pro drivers, you know, you can have a pro driver hogging the carpool during practice and qualifying and trying to hone the car to find a half, a tenth or a tenth, and yet if he just took the time to talk to his non-pro drivers, he could find those guys 2 or 3 seconds a lap.
Do the maths. If you're a pro driver and you can only drive 25% of the time, the other driver's driving 75% of the time. If you can get a second a lap from your other drivers, that's going to get you 75% of a second a lap. Can you, as a pro driver, get 3 times that out of your driving to improve your time over the others?
Good point.
You're doing a lot more good for the team. This is a team race amongst 3 drivers, 4 drivers, by getting the other drivers to go more quickly than you are by going more quickly yourself. And as a pro driver, you should be anyway going at the top speeds that you can. So, you know, your role as the pro, you've nailed it, is to bring the other drivers on.
And I think that unselfishness comes with experience. There are a few very good young drivers who are very good mentors, but a few of them, you'll see seasoned pros being able to do that more, because I suppose in some respects they've done it all, they've seen it all, they've got the t-shirt, they feel sometimes they've got nothing to prove. But there are a couple of very good young drivers who do that. I love to see it, the look on the face of a driver who goes out in a session, comes back and says, I can't do this, is hopeless. I'm doing a 2:30 and I should be doing a 2:25. And, you know, so you sit down and have a look at you watch a pro driver sit down, have a look at the data and go, right, well, and again, and this was another great pro driver, Tommy Erdos told this to me when he was working with Mike Newton. Tommy would go out, and you remember this, Paul, from the RML days, Tommy would go out and do 5 laps in the first 1 hour practice, and then out would go Mike and do 10 laps and then bring the car in, and then the car wouldn't move for 10 minutes. Then the car would go out and Mike would do another 10 laps. And what they were doing was looking at a particular part of the track, and Tommy would say, right, I'm not saying forget about anything other than turn 4, but I want you to get turn 4 right. Go and do it 10 times, then come back in. Yeah, that's better. So that was the place where you were losing 3 tenths. Now let's move to the place where you're losing 2 tenths, and basically building up Mike's confidence from there. And remember, he was driving a downforce car. Extraordinary stuff. Paul?
Ollie Bryant in the pits. I was about to give him credit because he's getting the gap further and further down. Nearly down to 3.5 minutes, the gap. So yes, only 1 lap behind, but in the pits for a final splash of fuel. I was hoping that wouldn't be necessary for Ollie, but the A3 cars use fuel at a slightly faster rate than the TCRs do. So although Ollie Bryant came in a little bit after Rick Breukers, his BMW's fuel refueling allowance is less. So they're actually having a driver change, I think, down on that car, and possibly we can have Nick Damon describing it.
It's Joe Bradley, actually, the 235 in the pit lane. Did Ollie get out there, Joe?
Yes, he did. Ollie's out. We're trying to work out who got in I think it might have been Adam Dawson, you know. I'll check with Ollie. I'll get a last word with Ollie. They didn't change tyres. He's now pulling away. Let's see if he turns immediate right. He does. Their garage is positioned virtually next door to the access garage to the refuelling area. So back out, same tyres, no need for a change, just a change of driver.
Martin Fisher, who's the car they're chasing down, is doing great work in the Hoffa Racing powered by Bonk Motorsport. He's just at a 2:21.3, which is that car's fastest lap of the Hankook 24 Hours of Silverstone. I love this comment that's just come in on Twitter at RSL_studio from Kook Racing UK, who are using the hashtag #ThisIsEndurance. He says, isn't it funny that when you make a series first and foremost about the competitors and for the competitors, as Creventic seem to have done, it seems to almost organically become entertaining. We've seen series in the past chasing quote-unquote entertainment, and the series, when that happens, often becomes not as entertaining.
My case for the prosecution there is, why did the first motor race happen? The first motor race did not happen to entertain anybody. The first motor race happened because somebody thought that his car was faster than the other person's car.
And wanted to prove it.
And wanted to prove it.
Yeah.
And motor racing, certainly on this side of the Atlantic, has always been that way.
Yeah, yeah. It's been good. I think the guys and ladies at Creventic have done a cracking job over the years, and this has grown into a quite large and tremendously efficient organisation that turns up to these tracks and basically everything's unpacked, set up, and is run in a very relaxed but very impressive way, Johnny. You know,
Yeah,
there's no
exactly.
stress. It's a lovely thing to do. www.24hseries.com, and by all means, as I say, somebody asking me the other day, what else can I do for this amount of money? And my questions were, why are you racing? Do you want a career out of it? Are you wanting to practice for something else, or do you just want a bit of fun? I quite like racing, okay. And what's important to you? Getting lots of track time in the car and feeling like I'm making a difference. Why would you want to go anywhere else, was my answer to that.
I'm looking for page 1 of the regulations for this championship, not only this championship, but also for the GT series and the Proto series. I can't find what I'm looking for at the moment, but there used to be a page anyway in the Creventic rules and regulations that said, at the end of the day, folks, we are here to have fun and to enjoy yourselves. And, you know, it's not... It is taken very, very seriously, but it's also, you know, the sporting manner is crucial as well. Paul's found me the line. Behave in a friendly, responsible and sportive manner. Everybody is here for his or her own pleasure and enjoyment. And, you know, the very fact that we've had so many smiling faces of many people getting out of fast race cars all weekend, that happiness, that enjoyment, I think seeps through the whole thing we're doing here. And that's the reason why people at home who are watching this race have also got big grins on their face, because, you know, we're doing the motorsport because everyone likes coming here to race cars and see who's going to be the fastest.
Joe Brown, I've got a final point to make on that. The leader is in the pit lane, which we weren't expecting, but Joe, you've just had the second place car as well. Joe Bradley? Possibly not. Hello, Joe. Right, the 100 car came in and went straight to fuel, is what I was being told by Joe, as the Mini having... Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, go give me a sec to switch my mic on. I'm fumbling around. Yeah, the 100 came by me and went straight into fueling, in difference to the 303. That's did pull up to its pit box on the pit here, but it's now just filing past. It'll turn sharp right as the 100 comes out of the refueling. The 303 goes in. So these guys do need a bit of a top-up to take them to the finish.
And Nick Damon caught the end of the leading car, the 303 Seat stop.
Yeah, it was a set of tyres that went on. They're now very much examining, I think, the tyre that came off the front right as the driver would sit there. So I don't know whether Rick was feeling there was a slight tyre issue, I'm not sure. But what I will do...
And has that car gone in for fuel? Yes, it has. Sorry,
I will go and have a look and see whether that was just a bit of fun to give Rick a chance to absolutely smash the lap record.
Right, OK, Nick. Just one final point about the atmosphere and the philosophy, mission statement almost, of how to go racing here. Somebody over this week, and I can't remember if it was from the Hankook 12 or the Hankook 24-hour teams, made a very good point. Whilst we were talking to them, was one of the things that makes things on the track a little more respectful and a more enjoyable is you have to share garages with people. Therefore you build up relationships with people, not necessarily in your same class who you're fighting against, sometimes it is, but it's very difficult to be annoyed with people when they're 6 foot behind you fixing their car when you've got problems with yours and you're sharing a bag of crisps or a hot kettle or whatever. And I think that's a really good point that is not unique to this series, but is a contributing factor along with all the good things we said about the organisers. Ivo Breukers is in the pit lane to explain this pit stop for the 303. Nick?
Ivo, Rick brought the car in, Rick took the car out, but he picked up some tyres as well as fuel. Was an issue with the tyres? We just give him some new ones to go as quick as he possibly can.
He's sliding a little bit, but also we needed to put 5 litres of fuel. Better safe than sorry, and with new tyres he's going to have some fun in the last laps.
So you haven't told him to be calm then? You told him just to go for it?
No, we told him to be calm until now, and now he can have one go. And then he has to save the car again, because it's very important to reach the end. So we're taking a little bit of risk, but yeah, this is endurance.
Yeah, great, thanks mate.
This is endurance, that's the hashtag, and the very clean front wheel rims on the 303 tell us they only put fronts on that car. Paul?
Yeah, just I said when they came in that they needed 42 laps to get them to the end, and I thought they would be able to get enough fuel in to get them 42 laps. Certainly the cars earlier in the race have done 42 laps, but it's a question of whether you had a full tank of fuel or whether you had an empty tank of, or you're only allowed to put 100 litres in, is the point with a TCR car. So sometimes that can be put in a 120 litre fuel tank, so sometimes that can work for you, sometimes it can't. But that's why those last 2 pit stops had to happen for the 2 leading cars.
The 106 Accelerate Audi RS3 is back out after its many issues. Joe Bradley?
I'm wondering if the Accelerate boys understand the concept of this endurance racing. It's not all about the challenge of the pit work, because as the 106 Audi pulled out, the Mini, the Accelerate Mini, the 134, pulled in, as if to say, right lads, okay, that one's out. It's not a garage, boys, it's a race. It's a race. I'm going to have a word with Dan Bailey.
Well, they've beaten the bogey time then, because there was the bogey time for the parts they were replacing on the turbo for the A3. The
wastegate actuator, wasn't it, that was the issue?
And the car now on its way, and they were told by Audi that they wouldn't be able to get the parts on before the end of the race, and they've beaten that by nearly a quarter of an hour.
What we don't know is how many fingers were burned, though, because they were saying it would take an hour for the turbo to cool down. If they only left that half an hour, then there might have been a few ouches and words worse than that. The Mini, by the way, before it came in there, and do we think the doors would? Yes, okay, knock on wood, had been going very well in that last stint and doing what Minis should do, which is only having 3 wheels on the ground through corners. It was really pushing on, sometimes exploring the outer envelope of some of the runoff areas as well. But the good news is, after all its travails, Max Bladen is giving that Accelerate Mini F56 John Cooper Works a really good end to the race, and that will lift spirits for the Accelerate guys. Don't forget your Spirit of the Race nominations to @RSL_studio, hashtag SOTR. Hello to Gulf Le Mans. Guff Le Mans. Very good, I misread that. But you'll understand why. He says, please pass on our thanks to all the crew for a great weekend. Even arranged for Creventic even arranged for me and my friend Nick to get a few hours slip at Vale. I haven't got everyone's Twitter IDs, but the organisers, the marshals, everyone at Silverstone and the broadcast team, hashtag this is endurance. Yeah, thank you for that.
purple sectors for Rick Breukers then, having been told by his dad that he can have one lap. He's set a purple sector in sector 1, which means fastest lap of the race thus far. This is for the 24-hour section of the race, obviously not going as quick as the GT cars earlier on. Purple in sector 2 as well, so Rick has just got to keep it together for the final sector here in order to beat the fastest lap of the race, which currently is being held by the Team Blake-Molen car, so it's to kind of make it a clean sweep for the number 303. There he goes through at the end of the lap, and the time is, John?
8:14.312. He has got the fastest lap of the race with those new fronts and warm rears on the car. 5 extra litres of fuel to ensure that that car could go to the end, and now they'll be on the phone to Rick going, all right mate, slow it down, no problem.
By 9/10 of a second was that fastest lap, so no mean effort.
What's the fastest we've seen a TCR car go round here? Do we have that information?
I'll leave that one to Johnny to look up, because I'm not sure that I've got it at my fingertips.
I'll see.
Gap is now 7 minutes 42 seconds between first and second there.
I can give you last year's fastest lap of the race, which was done by Benny Simonson, 2 minutes 14.6.
Right, well, that's faster than that.
So 2 minutes 14.3 from Rick Breukers in a year newer car, I suppose.
Yeah, the gap in the A3 battle, Martin Fisher in the 131 Hofer Racing powered by Bonk Motorsport car is still leading that in second place, and this has been, well, pretty much a race-long battle between these two identical cars, and Philip Harris is behind the wheel. Phil Harris behind the wheel of the 235 from Duo Racing, and that car is now 7 minutes exactly behind the leader last time around. So that's again stabilised out. It came down to just under 3 minutes, I reckon.
I can offer you pole position time for last year's race, but that doesn't count as a lap record, of course.
Indeed.
But that was quicker than that 2 minutes 14. It was a 2 minutes 13.4 for the Team Monschau Seat last year. Remember, that was a very quick car in last year's race.
We are down to the last 8.5 minutes. And we'll be closing voting in the Spirit of the Race Award in about 3 minutes' time. So when we've got 5 minutes to go, that'll give the responsible adult a chance to collate the numbers and send me the details so that we can get that announced before we head to the podium, which will be Joe Bradley on the podium at the end of the race, I believe. And at the moment then, with 7.5 minute lead, Rick Breukers is on a Sunday morning cruise. Just a nice little drive out in central England here at Silverstone, and the team will be saying, we're watching you on the onboard, we know you're riding the curbs, you can stop that immediately. Stop all of that, stop lighting up all of the shift lights, just go to the second of the blue ones, please. Stop that immediately, leave that all out, no sliding the car around, thank you very much indeed. We have seen endurance races, and there's been a raft of them in the last couple of 3 years, where there's been exceptional drama on the closing laps, and there are still cars to be lapped and still laps to complete for the leader. Through goes the 100, the almost all white Seat with the bright red number 2 illuminated on the side, with the Team Blake-Molen team being anchored home by Melvin de Groot, Robert Smith, René Steenmetz, and of course Sebastian Blake-Molen, the other drivers who have piloted that car throughout the 23 hours and 50 minutes.
And all credit to both of the first two, because as you say, runs. They've been clean runs.
Mechanically clean runs.
Mechanically clean.
I don't think anybody has always been on the tarmac here.
No, but I think there were more delays on the track for the Red Camel car. So the Blake-Molen car must look to time spent in the pits as being the area to work on for next year's race, the area where they lost the race, if you can say that, with still 7 minutes of the race remaining. At least their rear wing looks solid enough on the Blake and Molan car. And the Red Camel car coming across the start-finish line now to go on to his 408th lap of the race with 7 minutes remaining. And we're up to 410 by the time the checkered flag flies in that case. The pace towards the end of the race just about as fast as it's been all the race, as we have seen there.
That's what I mean. That is something that is extraordinary about these TCR cars built to do 25 minutes at a time, and you know they have been evolved and developed and run by the teams as a very, very reliable now endurance race car up to 24 hours. Just a quick bit of housekeeping here. At the end of the race, it'll be Joe Bradley who will take you through the podium celebrations. That will continue on the video stream, and we'll take you through all of that so that everybody gets their day in, if not the sunshine, certainly not the rain either here. And that will also be on the PA and 16:02 AM. So if you're heading for your car, make sure the radio's tuned in, and you'll be able to hear that as you are moving away. But we would encourage you to stay and show some due consideration to the Gladiators. On RS1, we'll be leaving you before the podium celebrations start with a reminder that our next live endurance racing coverage is next week on RS2 IMSA Radio for the Mobil 1 12 Hours of Sebring, which is a Saturday race in the US. Check local listings for details, or better still, check the calendar on radiolemans.com. The RS2 calendar, along with RS1 and RS3, will adjust their times of the live programming to your browser clock, so you'll get that in a local time. Before all of that, 8 o'clock on Wednesday UK time, which is now 4 o'clock in the afternoon in the US on the East Coast, seeing as all you guys have changed your clocks this weekend. That will be midweek motorsport. We'll round up everything that's happened this weekend motorsport wise, and also be looking forward to that Mobil 1 12 Hours of Sebring as we present the programme live from Sebring, Florida. That's all in the middle distance, in the very much sharper focus of the here and now. We're getting towards last lap time.
Yeah, Rick Broikers is 20 seconds ahead of schedule at the moment. He's on, if he was 20 seconds further back, then we'd be on for a 409 lap race, and this would be the last lap. But I think he's sufficiently far ahead, unless he slows his pace considerably to the tune of 20 seconds. He's going to get across the line in time to go off on with, as I say, 20 seconds left and do another lap. Now, that's all easy and dandy and fine for him, but it does mean that all the other cars are going to end up having to do an extra lap after the completion of 24 hours.
And remember, they were tight on fuel. They put an extra 5 in. The leader put an extra 5 in just for a bit of margin. So if they were close, anyone else who stopped at the same time might be close too.
If you've been doing 24-hour racing for a bit, you should never just put in enough fuel for 24 hours. You should always bear in mind that you might have to do an extra lap because of where the leader might be on the circuit. Now, the only place where that doesn't apply is if you're at the Nürburgring, because the Nürburgring 24 hours has different rules of the finish.
So this is effectively 24 hours from when the cars rolled off the grid yesterday, plus one more lap.
Not necessarily plus one more lap. It's the lap. It's 24 hours, and then you wait for the leader to come across the line.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Now, if the leader goes across the line at 23 hours, 50 minutes, and 55 seconds,
yes,
then yes, you have to do another lap.
Yes.
But if the leader runs across the line at 24 hours, 00, and 10 seconds, then that's done.
Right.
So it depends entirely on what Rick is going to do now. And if, as I say, he could choose to just slow down by 20 seconds because he has a margin of 2 laps anyway on the following car, and slowing down for 20 seconds isn't going to do him any harm at all.
A unique race weekend in terms of how the racing has been organised. So spirit of the race is a little bit different as well. As we start the last lap, the overall spirit of the race is effectively a spirit of the event, and it goes to the Silverstone Marshals for their tireless efforts in what have been, which you can only describe as adverse conditions, I think. Ladies and gentlemen, in orange and in black and in whatever colours you've been wearing this weekend to stay warm and dry, thank you very much for your efforts in keeping this going, and on a weekend when we've been remembering Alan Green, one of your own, it seems entirely appropriate that you get the Big Spirit of the Race award. But having two different events, the 12 hours SOTR has gone to Rothgo Racing, as voted by the listening and viewing public, never giving up and winning the race regardless of their early problems and other issues. And in the 24 hours, it's Accelerator. I think I've just edged the Synchro guys by the dint of the fact that they had two ailing cars to keep on the track rather than Synchro's one. But I think everyone has come out of this with a lot of credit indeed. Well done to all of the SOTRs, and thanks for voting.
Synchro akin to a service garage at times, because as Joe made the point, they waved goodbye to their Audi at one point, and then the Mini appeared at the other end of the pit lane. You've got to be kidding. We've just got rid of one, and here comes another one for possibly an engine change.
And I'm reminded as well that I haven't done this through the race deliberately, but I can do it now. Isn't it your birthday today, Paul?
It is, yes.
Happy birthday, Mr. Trustwell.
Damn. I was hoping to get through the 24 hours without anybody noticing.
Bring him home, Johnny.
Right, we've got a minute on the clock, so how is Rick Brokers going to play this? Because there's no sign of him slowing up just yet, and I think he's going to get across the line to squeeze one more out of this, as small speed is being shown by the Holmgaard Motorsport car that's being driven by René Rasmussen, and the car there for the Danish squad getting quicker and quicker. At Luffield now is Rick Brokers then through Luffield 2, and he will get another lap out of this then with 30 seconds still on the clock, with the Silverstone Marshals and the BRSCC keenly watching the stopwatch. Now the last lap board is displayed.
Yeah, 24 seconds. I estimated it being 20 seconds that he'd get through. So no chance of losing 20 seconds on a lap for Rick. So this is the last lap. Everybody else, as the clock ticks down to 24 hours completed, this point marks them going on to their last lap.
Joe Bradley is down in the pit lane with the Red Camel Jordan.nl team to get some initial reaction, immediate reaction. Halfway round the lap now on the Hanger Straight, and the Rick Brokers, who remember has driven two different cars in the 12 and the 24, and that means he was driving two cars within the 24-hour period of this race. Quite extraordinary young driver here, is on his last 3.5 kilometres to bring this car home.
Has he led both races as well? I'm trying to remember whether the
yes,
gold,
yes,
gold Lamborghini, wasn't it?
Led both races and fastest lap in both races. I mean, really, if he hasn't done that, he's not trying.
No, that's true. The BMW Z3 very, very slow on this final lap as it heads past the wing, and thankfully it was well off the racing line as Rick Brokers approached Abbey Corner. Lights flashing for the Seat to warn the 131 BMW 2 Series, and that's Michael Fisher at the wheel of the A3 class leader. We must not forget about Class A3 within the TCE series that are also here to score points in an entirely separate championship, remember, from the 24H GT series. And this is effectively the first round of the year for the European Championship. Points are not carried from Dubai into this one. We're starting a brand new championship here at Silverstone with a couple of visits to Spain, to Italy, to still come for the rest of this year, but it's been a trying 24 hours for the TCE series. It ends now, though, and it is victory for the Red Camel. Jordans.nl team, Rick Brokers, cheered across the line, and let's get some reaction from down on the pit wall.
I can talk straight away to Rick's teammate, Konstantin Kalkos. What a race that is. Have you ever had such a race that has ebbed and flowed, roller coaster? Did you think you guys would be standing here?
Well, it was a really crazy race. I mean, we had, I think, all of the conditions except snow. So, yeah, it was really fun to drive. We were tuned to be on the podium, so we're very happy to be here.
And I can see the rest of your crew are very, very happy. I'm going to let you go. Well done. Congratulations, Silverstone 24-hour winner. Let's talk to Ivo, if I can get in there, Seb. I don't think so. It's going to take me back to my rugby days if I do. Team photographs all around. I need to... let's have a word with the other driver in the team, Ivo Breukers, who's the father of Rick Breukers, who's in the car. Ivo!
Yeah.
Congratulations, my man!
Thank you. I'm so happy, so happy. So proud of the team. It was really team effort to do it. The right decision, the right time. I made some mistakes, but...
we named that corner, Ivo's Bog.
Yeah, I thought it would make it a little bit more exciting for the guys. And wow, you know, I'm so happy. And I think it's the first time that we won overall 24-hour race. We have been here on the top podium before in the class. And I'm really, really happy. It was very tough. Hats off for all the drivers. It was really tough. They know what I'm talking about. I think if everybody knows how tough it was, I think racing should have been done forbidden, because it was. But now, having achieved this and done this, and then it was so intense. You have to concentrate so much, and no room for any to relax. And yeah, it was really nice. The behavior on the track was perfect. Cars were very good and correct, and it was so intense and so intense. I'm so happy for the team, and we came here with this idea on our head. It was our goal to end up the podium, but you know, this is endurance.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think, Ivo, that all the work that's gone into that car, the development on the tractive system, conditions that we've seen this weekend, that's got to be the way to go with these cars?
It's a combination of it. The car returned last week from Dubai. Our guys are not full-time mechanics, so we had to turn around the cars and to prepare for this race, new engine, new gearbox, etc. So the preparations is one part. The other part is, of course, the whole strategy, and the best part is the technique of the car. And to be honest, the tractive system helps us a lot. It's a perfect system. We can adjust it during driving, wet, dry, and we go out on cold tires and we put it in the wet setting to warm them up, and then that's one of the reasons I want to go back to my team.
Yeah, you are. You're going to be up there soon. Let's go up to Nick Damon, who's got our other class winners.
Which was the 131 Hoffa Racing, and of course that was the BMW M325. This was the team, of course, which had people of mixed abilities, and it was Gustav Engelharder. Gustav, it must be a fantastic feeling to win in this team which embraces people of all sorts of abilities.
Definitely. It was, it's an unbelievable feeling. It's a great team, and wonderful people in the team, and it's just great.
And talk to us about your personal experience. You were driving at night, I think, in the wet, and it was disgusting.
It was. To be honest, it was the hardest stint in my racing career. So only let's say 2 meters dry, dark, and lots of gravel on the track. It was really hard.
Good, so thank you very much. And I believe that Rick has reached Parc Fermé and is with young Joe.
He is indeed, and he's just taking in the accolade from the rest of the team up here at the barriers in great style. Rick just taking his gloves off, been working very hard. It's very moist and damp everywhere, and Rick Breukers is just as damp from the efforts of driving that race. Just taking his hands to face. Well, congratulations, Rick, winner of the Silverstone 24 Hours. You got the job of bringing that car home. Was that quite a responsibility?
Of course it is. I mean, you don't want to make any mistakes in your last stint, and I think we did a good job. We even improved the best lap time of the race, so I think everything was according to plan.
A 2:14.3 was your fastest lap of the race. Was that deliberate effort with new tyres, etc.?
A little bit, but to be honest, the setup was not good. The car is not in good shape anymore. We had a really soft setup. I don't know what happened, but could have been much faster, so that's a bit pity. But we are, of course, very happy to have won the race.
Yeah. All that hard work from the team, all that hard work from you, the drivers. It's all about being right up there in a moment and spring that champagne. Well done, Rick.
Thank you very much.
Magnificent battle in A3 and in TCE. The margin of difference at the front of the field after 24 hours, 5 minutes 44.285 seconds. And in the A3 category, it was, let me see, 7 minutes 23.890 seconds. So magnificent stuff, Paul. In what was a slightly disappointingly small field, we've got into the reasons for that. They are reasonable and, you know, completely out of the control of the organisers. Bad weather, cars being delayed on ships coming back from Dubai, etc., etc. But the intensity of competition not diminished whatsoever.
No, absolutely. And I mean, we stay up all night and we watch these races, and they always provide emotions on various levels, and even within single teams, there's all kinds of emotions going on there with the various points. Got full marks for Ivo Breukers as well for putting his hand up to the mistakes that he made during the race. But great work from the Red Camel Jordans.nl team, and a great performance from all three drivers. Bearing in mind that was only a 3-driver crew that took the car all the way through the 24 hours. One of them was driving another car for at least the first 10 hours of the race. So good performance from all of them. Yeah, 2 laps to the margin of victory, then back to the Blake & Molan car in second place. And in A3, it was actually 3 laps at the end, with Ollie Bryant having to take that extra pit stop as well to get the fuel. Phil Harris in the car at the end of the duo racing BMW to get that car to the end.
Fabulous efforts by everyone who had problems, and in fact we only had 2 cars that didn't take the checkered flag. The Hyundai with its drive shaft and suspension issues, and the Golf GTI that had gearbox issues, I think, early on the motorsport development car. Johnny, before we hand the over proceedings to Joe Bradley, your thoughts on not just this race but the way this event has been put together and what we've seen here. This wasn't what we expected in terms of coming into this weekend. We were expecting still to be racing now, for example.
Yeah.
But I think it's worked rather well, don't you?
I think it's a testament to Creventic's ability to change the format, the schedule, sometimes the regulations of a meeting with, you know, a moment's notice. And clearly, as we said, the entry for the TCE series race wasn't as good as it might have been and was going to be on paper at times. So why not run a 12-hour and a 24-hour with that overlap period effectively? I really enjoyed the orange flag coming out after 7 hours of the 24 hours, and we had cars having to stay at full racing speed despite having just completed their race. So and we could talk about that race and still know, of course, that the TCE series was still going on, and a cracking start to the year for Red Camel as far as the European TCE Series Championship is concerned.
The 24H Series by Hankook, part of the FIA-approved Creventic 24-hour series. Number of series. Red Camel Jordans win with 2 laps of an advantage between themselves and the number 100 team Blake & Molan car, and it's a podium that will be filled by Seats with the LMS Racing by Baz Curtin. Baz Curtin in 3rd position. Holmgaard very quick in the Gulf in the drying conditions. It's a bit of a what if for them, I think, because that car really came on song as the track conditions got better in this early Sunday morning running. If we'd been running through to later on this afternoon, maybe they could have done a little more to improve their positions. 5th for the second of 3 Baz Curtin entries, the NKPP 175 Cupra. Then Hofer Racing, powered by Bonk Motorsport, winning the A3 class in the end by a 3-lap margin. But frankly, those cars had been tied together with a very short bungee rope. The Duo Racing 235 BMW coming home in 2nd. Both of those cars put into A3. PDM Motorsport, a very creditable 10th with a Z3M Coupe that we probably didn't talk about enough, and my apologies to those guys, but I can't remember seeing that car having a problem. It tooled round and round and round and round.
It was limping on that final lap with Peter Pauper just nursing it home, I think, but it did take the flag, as you say, 10th place overall and 3rd, so it makes a podium in Class A3.
But no substantial delays along the way.
No.
And in fact, that also goes for the first 4 home, John.
Yes, indeed. Can't say that for Accelerate and Synchro with Accelerate's Audi and the Mini. Those cars all suffering time in the garage with engine problems, necessitating engine changes for the Synchro Honda and the Accelerate Mini, but they were done, and the pit crew must be absolutely bushed. Now, we lost Team Hyundai Denmark after just under 7.5 hours with that brand new i30 NTCR. They were a great addition when we hope to see Jakob Christensen and the rest of the K Reiser team back either with that car or something else in the series. And then the Motorsport Development Volkswagen had problems early on. We move to Navarra next for a brand new event and a brand new challenge for the 24H TCE series, which will be paired up with the 24H GT series at Navarra. I look across to Johnny for confirmation of that.
Beg your pardon, no, it's Protos. It's Protos and the 24 GT series. What we're not going to have is the TCEs.
Sorry, my apologies. Yes, they're next up at Imola in May. But it is the GT series and the TCE series at Imola for the TCE cars, and the prototypes and the GTs will be at Navarra in April, and we'll have that all live here on RS1. Joe Bradley is standing by for the podium. Stay on the stream for that if you're on RS1. We'll be leaving you now. Join us on Wednesday, Midweek Motorsport, coming live from the Mobile One, 12 hours of Sebring, 8 o'clock UK time. Joe Bradley has the formalities, but from the booth, from Diana Binks, from Johnny Palmer, and from Paul Trustwell, as well as me, John Hindorf, Bruce Jones, and also Nick Damon. We wish you a fond farewell, and we'll leave you in the capable hands on the video stream of Joe Bradley. Bye from the booth.
Podium, everyone. Am I coming out of there? Yes, we are. Welcome to the podium, everyone, for the 2018 Silverstone 24 Hours. Firstly, can you give yourselves all a massive round of applause, because this race has thrown everything at you, boys and girls. You all deserve, you're all winners to get to this point and this race this weekend. Let's get straight on with our overall podium, though. And our overall podium consists of this. In third place, car 129, that's the LMS Racing by Bas Kooten, Seat. Antti Berry, Kari-Pekka Laaksonen, and Ollie Kangas. In second place, car 100, Team Blekemolen Seat, Sebastian Blekemolen, Melvin de Groot, Robert Smith, and René Steenmetz. And ladies and gentlemen, the winners of the Hankook 24 Hours of Silverstone 2018. Red Camels Jordans, Seat, Ivo Breukers, Rick Breukers, and Konstantin Skalko in the number 303 Seat. Congratulations, and now the national anthem of the winning team. Congratulations, our winners of the 2018 Hankook 24 Hours of Silverstone. Please welcome to the podium to present our trophies. Please welcome Manfred Sandbickler from Hankook Tyres and Ola Doleman from Creventic. And firstly, the third place trophies going to the number 129 LMS Racing by Bas Kooten Racing Seat, Antti Berry, Kari-Pekka Laaksonen, and Ollie Kangas. Round of applause, please, for our third place drivers and team. And in second place, the car number 100, Team Blekemolen Seat, Sebastian Blekemolen, Melvin de Groot, Robert Smith, and René Steenmetz. Congratulations, guys, in second. And the winners' trophies to be presented to Ivo Breukers, Rick Breukers, and Konstantin Skalko of the number 303 Red Camels Jordan Seat. The winners, ladies and gentlemen, of our 24 Hours of Silverstone 2018. And now our team's trophies. Team trophies once again. Hang on, guys. Whoa, you've peaked too early. Nobody said champagne. Oh well. Oh well, if you could all get back on the podium, please, guys. We've got more trophies for you. We're not quite finished. We've got more trophies for you. Melvin, yes, more trophies. Everyone back on the podium. They didn't do this in rehearsals. And now our team's trophies. Please welcome Ola Dorleman from Creventic, Manfred Sandbecker from Hankook, firstly to the third place team, which is the LMS Racing by Baskuten. In second place, the team Blake-Molen. And the winners, as we've said, the Red Camels Jordan Seat, the winners of the Hankook 24 Hours of Silverstone, raising more trophies in the air. And now we have our class presentation for the TCR class, which is our overall podium. So stay where you are, gentlemen. In third place in TCR is the LMS Racing by Baskuten Seat, Antti Burry, Kari-Pekka Laaksonen and Olli Kangas in the number 129. In second place is the number 100, Team Blake-Molen of Sebastian Blake-Molen, Melvin de Groot, Robert Smith and Rennie Steenmetz. And the winners in the TCR class, car 303, our overall winners, car 303, the Red Camel Jordan Seat, Avivo Breukers, Rick Breukers and Konstantin Skalko. Once again, now that you've got all of your trophies, guys, please raise them in the air. And a big round of applause for our overall and TCR podium, everyone. Well done. Well done, guys. Congratulations, everyone. Well done, Sebastian. Great racing. Well done, Ivo. Well done, guys. Thank you. Well done. Good to shake. I'll pat you on the back. Well done, guys. Rick. Well done, guys. We've got one more podium left, and it's our A3 class presentation. And once we replenish our champagne, we will be moving on with that. I may have to have a word with our competitors for this podium. No champagne until I give the word. Almost there. So it goes without saying, another hard-fought race, this time for the A3 category. I think it's been a hard-fought race even at the back of this field, just to get to the finish. As I said, congratulations to everyone who actually got to the finish. We're ready to go with our A3 podium presentation. Please welcome to the podium the number 999 PDM Motorsport BMW Z3 team, Dimitri Klukens, Maxens van der Kerschhoff, Pierre Delancier and Peter Pup. That's the PDM Motorsport BMW. And in second place is the number 235 Duvo Racing BMW. Philip Harris, Oliver Bryant, Graham Bryant, Adam Dawson and William Plant. Second place in our A3 class. Well done, guys. And the winners of our A3 class in the Hankook 24 Hours of Silverstone for 2018. Please welcome the winners of A3. Car 131, Hofer Racing, powered by Bonk Motorsport. Martin Kroll, Michael Schreer, Michael Fischer, Bernd Kuiper and Gustav Engelranger. Yes, we will get you on that podium. Congratulations, guys. Well done, everyone. And now our trophy presentations. Now, I'm just going to say, no champagne until I give the word, okay? We had a bit of a premature one before, so we're going to get this one right. Right, please welcome, once again, Manfred Sandbecker and Ola Dorleman. In third place in our A3, the PDM Motorsport BMW, car 999. Dimitri Klukens, Maxens van der Kerschhoff, Pierre Delancier and Peter Pup. Third place trophies there. Big round of applause for our third place in A3. And second place trophies now to the number 235 Duvo Racing BMW team. Philip Harris, Oliver and Graham Bryant, Adam Dawson and William Plant. Congratulations to them in second place. And the winners of the Hankook 24 Hours of Silverstone 2018 for our A3 class, the number 131 BMW 235i of Hofer Racing, powered by Bonk Motorsport, Martin Kroll, Michael Schreer, Michael Fischer, Bernd Kuiper and Gustav Engelringer. Our winners of A3, everyone. Congratulations. Please hold your trophies high. And when you're ready, the champagne! Congratulations to all of our teams in our A3 class, and indeed all of our teams who have taken part in this Silverstone 24 Hours. And for now, let's have a look back on what the 2018 24 Hours of Silverstone have brought. So that concludes our coverage for the Hankook 24 Hours of Silverstone for 2018. I'm already thinking of April and Navarra. For the next round of the Creventic series, we'll be bringing you all things and all the action from Navarra in Spain. That's the 20th to the 22nd of April. That's not too far away. But for now, we'll say goodbye from Silverstone and look forward to our next round in Spain. Thank you.